Thank you.
All right, so I am going to call the Southborough Capital Planning Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, February 8th, 2021, 7:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Capital Planning Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we'll post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. With that, I will note that we are all here. And before we dive into the agenda, wanted to welcome our newest member. Steve, I will ask that you unmute yourself. We are thrilled to have a seventh member. We've been a committee of 6 since formation. I won't ask the rest of the committee to go around and introduce themselves, but I do, for those that maybe didn't see your interview with the Board of Selectmen last week, I'd like you to spend just a few minutes on your background, and we'll go from there through our agenda.
Great, thanks for everything. So my name's Steve Hinternetter, and I've been a resident of Southborough since 2003. I've actually worked in Southborough since 1997, and my background is in civil engineering, and specifically I work for a construction company. So my specialty is really the underground type of construction inside of very large commercial stuff. The company I work for is called East Coast Slurry. We do very large slurry walls downtown Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, mostly in those areas. And I moved here from New York in 1997. I'm married, 2 children. They go to the local schools here. And my I don't know, I'm not sure what else to say here. So, I've got a great background in that, and I can't wait to figure out how to make a difference. Not sure how it'll be, but I'm sure I'll do something.
And anyone that's curious in any additional background, Steve did a great job interviewing with 2 other candidates last week with the Board of Selectmen. So, Steve, we're happy to have you on board and look forward to your contributions. So let me lay the groundwork for tonight. We're going to start with we're going to skip over meeting minutes. We'll come back to that at the end of the meeting. There are various department heads and or boards or committees that have asked to join us at various points tonight. Unfortunately, everyone had a different schedule, but it actually worked. So I think I've got it all under control. I have a few people on standby that said, call me if you really need me, but I'm not joining. So, the whole goal here tonight is to walk away with as much consensus around the FY22 capital. And it could be as simple as we stick with what we were at, where we're at in October, or we take a different path based on some of the recent conversations. And we do have 2 items that we haven't officially voted on yet. 1, the fire tanker that we've talked about at great length, and 2 will be a presentation from Karen a little later in the meeting related to a water main that we've heard nothing about yet. So we're going to start with a joint meeting with the library board. So it's going to take me a second to get all of them in here and let Marguerite call her meeting to order. And I'll give you some preview of what we're going to discuss once they get themselves officially convened. So Marguerite, I'm going to start bringing you and your board in, as well as Ryan. I will let you convene your meeting as soon as you're all in.
Thank you for that. Let me just do a roll call and make sure that we have a quorum, if you would. Do we have trustee Davis?
She's coming in.
Okay.
She was the
Sorry,
last one.
I'm probably doing this too fast.
You have everyone in that I can see that is related to your group, Marguerite.
All right, let me
Yes,
do
I'm here.
just a roll call to for the minutes. Trustee Davis, are you present?
Yes, present.
Trustee Ekberg? We'll go back to him. Trustee Maney?
They're both muted.
They're all mute. Yeah,
Okay. You guys want to unmute?
I'll ask them.
Sorry, it's Janet Beatty. I'm,
Okay, so
present.
Janet, you're here. Trustee Reagan, are you present?
Don't see.
No.
Okay, and she couldn't make it. And trustee Asdani?
Present.
Okay, and trustee Ekberg, do we have you?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yep, that's perfect. Okay, we'll call
Okay.
our meeting to order at 7:36.
Okay. And hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hi,
So let me.
Kim Regan isn't able to attend, but
Okay.
the board still has quorum. So
Okay, thank you. So Marguerite, let me give the rest of the capital planning committee some background of why you're all here tonight, and then go from there.
All right.
So since our last meeting, in a separate meeting, it came to my attention that the library was considering whether or not to postpone the library interior renovations that are carried on our capital plan for FY22. I know there was some discussion in our last meeting as we started to think through prioritization, whether that, discussion around the item, but in general, I think the consensus has been all along is to support this. And that there has been a lot of discussion about how many years this has kind of been pushed back. It was originally definitely on last year's capital plan for FY21. Brian and Mark will have to look to you to see if it was on a prior capital plan prior to that, but I know it's at least 1 year deferred. So I reached out to Ryan, I reached out to John Parent, and I reached out and spoke with Marguerite, and we thought the best course of action would be to kind of get everyone in the same room, so to say, to kind of see what their current position is. And I don't know if anything's changed since our discussion, but my main concern as chair of the committee was I didn't want committees, boards, or department heads to feel like they should be just pulling back on a capital item just because. We all know we're in a very difficult financial year, both operationally and capital. We're obviously feeling the effects of some deferred capital, but I felt it's really important for us to hear how dire the need is, what the pros and cons are for doing it now. And then it's, I think, incumbent on the capital planning committee to figure out the best way to prioritize and slot it based on everything else that we have in front of us from many other departments, boards, committees, commissions, et cetera. So Marguerite, Ryan, I don't know which one of you is going to run with kind of what the latest thinking is, or if you kind of need to all think out loud in an open meeting setting. But I think what we're looking to understand is, do you still think that this is an item you want to pursue for FY22, and why or why not? And then obviously we'll start to think through the financial considerations as a broader group.
A little bit of background on it. I've been on the library board for 11 years, and we've talked about replacing that carpet all 11 years. It was laid down in 1989 when the building was had the addition put on, and that makes it something like 32 years old. It's done very well by us, but it is 32 years old and it looks it. Our thought was we wanted to be good citizens and we'd defer if the town wanted us to again, but we have deferred it quite a bit. And well, that's my position, is it would be really fabulous to have that item allowed to us for the next budget.
I don't know if you because I'm not sure that every member of capital planning has been to the library or seen the carpet. Marguerite and I actually took some photos today really quickly, and I am happy to share those
Yeah.
in the meeting if that would be helpful.
I guess let me defer to the capital planning members. Does anyone want to see pictures of the carpet? Are you familiar with what the 32-year-old carpet looks like?
I don't need to
Raise-
see them.
All right, Ryan, let me, you're bouncing around on my screen here, but let me make you a co-host.
Marguerite and I also took a look today through some of the records of the library, and we found some notes about the carpet. I think the color is called Mohawk Blue from the 1989 edition documents, but we could not find anything more recent than that. Kim Ivers, who's been there a little bit longer than I have, recalls that the circulation area was done in like the early aughts. So we think that that area of the carpet was potentially either replaced or redone, and it is a slightly darker color than the front room and the back upstairs. So that's the best I can do as far as history. I would just say if we can't track the first document we can find about the upstairs carpet is from 1989. That's probably not great.
The other thing I would like to point out before I forget it is that carpet now is put down in squares so that if one particular part of the carpet, I think they're like 2 feet by 2 feet, if one particular part of the carpet is worn or it is damaged somehow, you just pull up the square and put down another square, which is lovely. This is a full wall-to-wall roll, so there's just no way to repair, like at the head of the stairs where it really looks pretty worn out.
So Ryan, why don't you, I see you got them up. Why don't you enlarge them when you get a chance?
Can you guys see this at all?
We can see your file folder. We cannot see the actual,
Okay.
I mean, we can see the thumbnail. We can't see the actual. You should try to enlarge it just for those that are maybe watching from home.
Yeah. Is that good?
That's much better.
So we did try to find some problem areas, and we were going to maybe do 1 or 2 pictures, but then we ended up taking, we took more, and we only did this for a couple minutes. So this is Marguerite's favorite, which is right at the top of the stairs as you walk in through upstairs. So you can see, I think it doesn't even really look that much like a carpet. In my opinion, it's so worn. And then this is sort of the area where this is what we believe was in the addition in the 80s. And this is the part that we think might have been redone, 20 years ago, as opposed to 30. And you can clearly see some stains in some of the areas. So I'm not doing this to provide sort of an emotional.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, Ryan, what I'm hearing, right, and Marguerite, please survey your board, but I'm hearing you still want this considered for FY22, right?
If you would.
Yes, I think looking at the condition of the carpet, I'm going to let my board talk and then I'm going to be quiet for once, is I think you can clearly see that the carpet is not in great shape.
Okay. So Marguerite, why don't you just run your board through and see if any of them think that we should push this off before I open it to capital planning.
Yes, thank you. And I think that the cost that was given was $115,000, just, to put it in perspective. It's not, something you undertake lightly. But I wonder if, I'll just do you alphabetically if you would. Jane, do you want to speak to it?
Can you hear me? I think
Yes.
that 115,000 also included labor and a paint job of the whole upstairs of the
Correct.
library. That wasn't just carpet, but
Right.
that was in 2014. So clearly, cost will be higher.
So John Parent's in the audience. I know for a fact he's refreshed this number at the beginning of the capital cycle, but John, I'm
Oh.
going to bring you in case you want to add anything to anything anyone says.
Okay,
But my understanding is it was confirmed earlier this year.
that was the price for the whole painting
Yes.
and carpets for today's.
John, can you
Okay.
confirm that?
What was the last statement?
Just confirming that the 115 is a current year number, not a 2014 number.
Current year number.
Okay. Well, that's good, I guess. All I can say is it seems almost embarrassing that it's been left so long, given it's the library's prominence as one of the main gathering places and a focal point for our town. So I would be in favor of having it on the capital budget.
Okay, thank you. David, how about you?
This is David Eckberg. We're all taxpayers. We're all aware, our trustees of all the various elements of the fiscal constraints. And at the same time, the deferred maintenance syndrome has been going on apparently for quite some time. The real question here is, in the current environment, $115,000 is, if we kick the can down the road a few more years, is it going to be 150? Is it going to be 175? I mean, who knows? But I guess I'm in favor of including this in the capital budget this year. Again, fully aware of the fiscal constraints that we're all operating with.
Okay, thank you. And Janet, how about you?
Well, I'm usually the cheap one in the group. And, it does look like something, it's not desperate. It's pretty hideous looking. It's not a desperate thing. I guess I'd feel better about it if I knew what the trade-offs were. But I think it's probably time to do it.
Okay, thanks. And Amy, how about you?
Yeah, I think it needs to be done. I also have concerns when we had the leak in the basement, while it wasn't fixed, there was a lot of moisture and humidity in that building. So we don't know what's under the current carpet right now. I worry about, the staff alone in that building and you saw some of it is starting to wrinkle, which can be hazards for trip and falls, especially when we have people in the building, an elderly population that visits frequently. And I think, you talk about deferring, but we have no, idea what the economic future holds. At this point, it doesn't look like it's going to get any better in the foreseeable future. And, as a board, we have covered some capital items on our own, like our copy machine. But this is something that needs to be done. And also just one of those things that the building does happen to be empty. So it makes it, easier to get done rather than trying to block things off once, knock on wood, the building is busy again.
Thank you. I thought while you were all speaking, the town has certainly gotten its money's worth out of that carpet. I mean, it's been well used, and it was a I don't know, we just put up with it for a long time. But my question was, is the $115,000 locked in, or is there any wiggle room in that anywhere?
John?
We need to keep that number as a safe number, Marguerite.
Okay.
That's what it's really budgeted at, and I wouldn't really be comfortable moving that number too much.
Would it be possible to explain the breakdown? There's some of us, including myself, that are new to the board, and I just am not sure what that all entails.
I don't have the breakdown in front of me right now, but we can get that for you. If I recall, I believe the carpet was about 65,000 of that. Don't quote me on it, but I believe we're in that ballpark just for the carpeting. And we have to also bring in movers. You got to replace the cove vinyl molding around it and paint the whole area. And as you've seen, the front room is super huge height wise. So that's not a cheap paint job up in that building.
Thank
Right.
you.
You're most welcome.
Could I ask John, what are some of the reasons to not do it now?
The only reason I could give outside of the economic impact right now
Yeah,
is that, this last year, the library really hasn't been used much. So we're kind of in the same position we were last year. So basically it's a wash time-wise on the wear and tear of the carpet. It's almost like this year didn't happen. You've only had maybe 5 or 6 people in the building at a time right now. You haven't had the constant flow of traffic.
mhm.
Is there anything else, Marguerite, from the library side?
No, I mean, I think I can speak for the board. We went back and forth on this a lot, and we were sort of resigned to having to defer it, even though I think we all really feel that the library has so many really beautiful things about it now, especially with the facade and the concrete's been painted and so on. And then you get inside and this carpet is just so unattractive. We just were hoping that we could sort of finish up the library, which we probably will have to be living in without a grant for enlarging it for maybe a long time. We were sort of hoping that the library could have this so it would look presentable. And also my thought is that if we defer it now, don't we have to defer it again and again because we don't know what the next few budgets are going to look like?
Well, capital alone, not even operations, the next few years, there's a lot there.
There's a lot, what, excuse me?
There's a lot there. Like a lot of items on the list
Yeah,
From-
okay.
from many other departments.
Yep.
Much larger than what we're looking at this year.
Are there any other ways to fund this? Should we fundraise? I mean, we really feel pretty strongly about getting it done. If it's humanly possible, could we fundraise? Could we do something? Is there any way you can think of that we could get this money?
You
So-
can always fundraise.
So I think it's a good question, Marguerite. Let me open it to capital planning. I'm going to go alphabetical order. If anyone has any questions, if you don't have any questions, that's fine. I'm just looking before the library board leaves us, if anyone has any questions on where they stand or any questions related to the need. I don't intend to actually vote on this item until we get through everything else, because I realize there may be some plug and play that people need to prioritize and maybe in different spots. So Lisa, I'm going to start with you.
I don't really have any questions, just a comment if I may, Jason.
Go ahead.
So even at the last meeting, my position on this has changed. I think for me, this is one that if we are looking to change something, this is not one I'd be looking to take off the capital. I feel pretty strongly about that. I think this can has been kicked way too many times, and I think it's at some point we need to do it. And I think even as tough as it is, this would be one of the last things I would look to defer. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
Marguerite, what are your current plans for reopening to the best you know at this point?
I'm going to defer to Ryan. I keep hearing September, but I'm going to let Ryan answer that if he would, please.
We are hoping to do some form of reopening as of July 1st, Kathy, at this point.
So wouldn't it be helpful if this got approved, for July 1st to be able to do as much as you can before you officially reopen?
Well, I understand that this would have to go into obviously FY22 because it's subject to town meeting approval for capital. So Kim Ivers and I have planned or planning currently a bunch of sort of outdoor offerings during the summer because we'll have the property and the ability to do stuff outside. So I think this might be a unique opportunity this year since a lot of what the library is going to plan is going to be outside anyway. And if we have the upstairs unavailable because we're doing work, I think there's a little bit of synergy there. Also, I will say John has been very kind to the library and he has helped to push through like the EMS project, a new boiler. I mean, this is really, I think, the last big item we have for a while that's planned. And it is something that we've just deferred, because a number of items and a number of times, and we have gotten items, but it's because they've been necessary, I think.
I don't think anyone doesn't think this is necessary, Ryan. It's just a question of timing.
I think if we could do it this summer, that would probably be preferable for what we have planned right now.
That's it for me.
Jeff?
Yeah, so as I think through our capital policy that we recently pushed over to the Board of Selectmen, there's two questions I have, maybe for John and Ryan. First, if we were not to do this, what would our maintenance costs be or other type of operating costs to keep this current carpet situation intact until we go forward?
There would not be any change in operating costs. The problem we've run into with this particular carpet is no one cleaned it for years.
Oh.
And so the problem I ran into when I brought in a carpet cleaning company, because we like to clean carpets regularly, they won't touch it. They're afraid of adding moisture to it now could stretch it out. And so operational costs, it would just remain as is until it's changed.
Okay. And then the other thing that kind of struck a chord with me was the mention of the water leak several years ago and potential for mold, which to me would be a threat to the health, right, of the citizens that come in. So how likely is it, John, in your opinion, that there may be mold under that?
Extremely
based on-
unlikely. You have to keep in mind that when that flood happened, within a couple hours, we had in massive dehumidification systems, heating systems to warm the air. I'd say you're approaching the point of zero upstairs, especially. They ripped down the downstairs to studs. They didn't goof around with that. When that happened, it's taken real seriously in the water situation.
And what about like the buckling of that carpet? How serious of a risk is it for people to trip?
Oh,
I've only noticed, and Ryan, you can confirm this, I'm sure, only happens on extremely humidified days when we were having problems with the old air conditioning system. I don't even know if it had happened again now. Honestly, if it buckled, it was not huge buckles by any means, but I can't give you a guarantee that no one ever would. There's no way to guarantee that.
Yeah, so because and John is right. It's for the most part, I would say you don't see variation in the carpet, but it does, I call it ballooning. So when we first get hot in the summer, the adhesive that holds the carpet down, like air gets trapped in it, and then you feel like you're kind of walking on a balloon, like it it doesn't completely adhere to the ground anymore because it's so old, and staff do occasionally trip on it. It happens a lot in the back stacks area, so we actually have warned patrons about it if it's a really bad day, but generally it only occurs for maybe, like, I would say 2 weeks out of the summer. So it's not crazy bad. I will say also, just sort of piggybacking on John's point, when the flood remediation was occurring, they did set up dehumidifiers upstairs as well as downstairs. So they were in both places.
Okay. That's all I had. No, thank you, Jason.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jeff.
everyone.
Steve, you have anything?
So I guess I would ask two questions. One is for the 115,000, what's the actual lifespan projected for that? Is that a 15-year, a 25-year? I mean, you talk about 1989 was 32 years ago, and those carpets are in dire straits now. Do we know what the 115,000 brings?
Steve, what I highly recommend whenever you're going to do carpets, especially in a building like a library where all the stacks are going to have to be moved, you would put in a quality carpet square that you would see either in a hospital or a mall or any other place where you would have extreme traffic flow, like a convention center. That way you're looking at another potentially 30 years. You know, you don't want to move these stacks any more than you have to. It's not a cheap endeavor to move all your bookcases.
I would concur. So you know, roughly a 30-year life cycle is what you'd look at.
I think realistically, yeah, a good quality carpet, I don't think it's unreasonable to see 30 years.
My other question is more just, somebody mentioned fundraising earlier. Is there ways of, if the town approved a certain amount of money, can any of that be matching funds to any of the fundraising through the, through the library? You may not need to answer that now, but I was just curious if there's something like that.
My only concern about fundraising would be, what if we don't raise enough money? I mean, it would, would that mean that we don't get a new carpet? What would be the mechanism or vehicle for returning money if that was the case? I just think I'm not saying that maybe fundraising isn't an option we should consider, but I think there's a lot of logistic concerns that we would need to work out if we want
I can speak a little bit to the fundraising. Since I've been there, we've done 2 fundraisers. The most recent one made $10,000, and the one before that, which was about maybe 2014, maybe made $11,000. So we don't really make a lot of money when we fundraise.
It's very hard to raise money in Southborough, as we all know that have done it. And I don't think this is going to turn out people saying we're raising money for a carpet.
Right.
I just don't think it's worth the effort to raise money to say we want to paint and carpet.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, this is Janet Maney. You can't see me. I think it's easier to raise money for a new thing, something that enhances things, something that would appeal to somebody. But when people see all the work being done on Main Street and whatever, the fact that they'd have to shell out money for carpeting just doesn't add up.
I think the board has always tried, the library trustees have always tried to weigh the cost of sort of not increasing taxes with a capital request like this versus what is best for the library. And I just think there's been a history of the board trying to work with committees like advisory with the selectmen, and that is why it's been deferred. I mean, my concern is, are we just going to defer this every year?
Joe.
Yeah, I have a concern about the carpet, especially if it can't be cleaned. I mean, it's a center in the past and will be in the future, a center for children's events. And they're on that carpet a lot. My kids rolled around on it too. And if you told me it was 30 years old and it hadn't been clean, it couldn't be cleaned, I might have had a few reservations myself. So I'm very much in favor of this one. As far as the library goes, also, it'd be interesting to know if there have been any plans for reorganization of the library itself, given that you're putting down a new carpet, you're not gonna have carpet stains when you move all your stacks around. So it'd be an opportunity for the library to also make whatever operational changes they wanted to make with the format.
Good idea.
Anything else, Joe?
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right, Andrew.
So I think I kind of agree with everybody. I'm certainly in favor of it. I think the only question I have is timing. John, will all the exterior renovations or interior be done by then? So I'm just thinking if we're gonna paint and if we're banging on the exterior walls, if it's gonna cause plaster to crack or something like that. But if it's all done,
yeah, the exterior should be totally wrapped up hopefully by the end of March. So I'm not overly concerned about that in the least. We should be good to go on that, Andrew.
And I got no issues.
Jason, can I ask one more question? I apologize.
Yeah.
This is for the upper floor though, not the children's floor. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is the upstairs.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think what Mr. Palmer is referring to though is because our summer reading events are so large. If we hold them inside, we actually hold them upstairs. And I know he's been there with his kids in the summer, which is when we have about 200 people. And he's right, they sit on the carpet we're talking about right now.
Thank you.
All right. We have a long line behind all of you. So I think you've heard from our committee. I think there's obviously a lot of support, but we have a lot of obviously other people. So I don't want to, I guess I'll follow up, Brian and Marguerite, with all of you tomorrow if we make any votes on it tonight, and let you know if anything's changed. But right now it's on the FY22 capital plan.
Okay,
so
thank you. That's great. I'd like to have among the library trustees a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second,
Okay, all those in favor, trustee Davis,
aye.
trustee Ekberg,
Aye.
trustee Landry, aye, trustee Maney,
Aye.
trustee Yazdani.
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everyone, and thank you very much.
Anytime. Thank you for coming in.
Bye.
All right, a lot of them are dropping. Let me just see who's. We are going to move to Chief Paulus next. I know there were some questions about cruisers in the last discussion. Maybe what I'll do, Chief, is I'll bring you in case there's any questions for you. But there was some documents that I did put into the share site in preparation for the meeting. As you all remember, we were carrying $115,000 to replace 2 police cruisers. Chief Paulus and I have traded many notes over the last couple of months, but in particular spoke this last week about the 2 cruisers, and different officers like SUVs versus sedans. So the prior budget anticipated 2 SUVs. The chief has modified his request to go to 1 SUV and 1 sedan for next year. In addition, he is looking at other funding sources to fund the cameras that were budgeted, the dash cams, essentially, whether it be Harvard funds or the town's annual Maya grants that multiple departments have access to. And that's traditionally how those cameras have been funded. So the request on the table right now for 2 cruisers for next year is now $101,000. In addition, John Parent and I have discussed whether he would be able to slot the hybrid Explorer, which is what the chief is looking to purchase, into the Green Communities grant, because there is a stipend every year for vehicle purchases, especially if you buy them outright. It's the best we can tell from the documentation for next year, an additional $5,000, but we likely won't know if it'd be funded by the time you get to town meeting. So the 101 assumes you don't get the grant, but John is in the process of drafting his grant for next year. There's a certain amount that's allocated to Southborough and certain criteria, but he was going to look at the specs that the chief uses for the state bid list to see if it does apply. But I do think if we're supportive of 2 cruisers, the 101 is the right number to carry. So with that, Chief, maybe first and foremost, welcome. Great to see you. And if there's anything you would add to that statement before I just see if any committee members have questions on your capital request. I know you've been here before, but obviously the circumstances with the budget. You're on mute, Chief. Still on mute.
Are you able to hear me okay?
There we go.
Okay. All right. Thanks for taking the time. I'll be brief. Exchanged a lot of information with Jason, able to answer any questions. In addition, always free if any of you are around during the day or even in the evening, make an appointment, stop by. I'll take you for a walk through the cruiser line, show you what we have. I think some of the concern as well is that the vehicles that are over 100,000 miles, we do move them up the line, but that being said, they don't last forever as well. And then also I've spoken with Jason at length. What we're looking at is probably vehicles coming in about a year from now. The vehicle that I ordered to replace mine that's moving down to the detective, I ordered that at the beginning of last July. It just came in last week. And speaking with the suppliers with COVID, the lines really backed up. So anything that we're looking at, and I did give you the mileage chart, you're probably looking at a year from now for replacement. So that being said, I'm able to answer any questions that you have, hopefully, and let you guys make a decision.
So I'm not planning to go around the horn. I'm just going to look for hands raised if anyone has questions on the cruisers.
Jason, I think, since I kind of brought it up last time, when I start.
Go ahead.
Steve, thanks for coming. I think my only real question was, I think we had 5 patrol cruisers previously, and now we're going to 6. Can you just talk about like how, what the benefit of having 6 are, or why we're at 5 and not why we're now at 6?
Yeah, we're at 5 and we've expanded the operation a bit to 3 officer minimums, which expands the time that the cruisers are on the road. I've also realized that the cruisers that move up the line, so you have to have cruisers, 6, 7, and 8, although they've moved up the line over 100,000, hopefully they're not too far out of range. And when a vehicle gets in an accident, a vehicle has to get repaired. We have a recruit going to the academy. He started today. We have to give him a reliable cruiser for 5 months to go back and forth to the academy. So we also have to keep those 6, 7, and 8 cruises, serviceable. And I'm just finding as we expand a little bit that 5 is not enough. We have to go 1 more to 6. And then also one of those cruises that I just mentioned, we spread out the cruises during COVID. So I think it's cruiser 111. It suddenly went from probably 101, 102,000 to about 116,000 right now when we expanded the line because of COVID. Little good news in there. It keeps the mileage off some of the other newer ones coming in, but we're going to need 1 more going forward.
Okay, and I think the only other one was, so if we're adding 2, I know some of the other cars are up there in mileage. So are we decommissioning 1 or 2 or how many are coming off the roll?
We would be decommissioning 2. I like to carry 12.
Okay.
And the 2 that we would be decommissioning them, I've had it. They're at the end of life. They're detail only cars.
Yep.
They're basically, if we can roll them out to the detail and keep the lights on, we'll do that for as long as there's not a major repair involved. And if you look at the list, it would be Cruiser 112, which is over 130,000 miles, and Cruiser 106, which is the current detective car, which needs to be retired in the next year. That has roughly, I think, 125,000 miles.
Good. Okay.
Chief, maybe to layer onto that question, would any of those 2 that you just talked about decommissioning, if you were to get these 2 new ones, would any of those, they're decommissioned from a police perspective, but would any of them be suitable from a facilities director perspective? Because we know we have that kind of request sitting out there, but no dollars associated with it.
I don't believe so. They're really at the end of life. And these 2 vehicles were past patrol cars. That means they have the cage in them. They don't have any carpeting. They're really, really stripped down, and they've seen a hard life. So I would say no.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Go ahead, Joe.
I was looking at the list earlier today and looking at it now. I mean, we have basically 5 cars that are 100,000 or over and 2 at 99. I'm not sure how far you can kick this down the road, even if we want to. I think Chief Paulus would tell us the life of most of these vehicles. I mean, how do you want to be in a high speed anything in a cruiser with 100,000+ miles, and who knows what's happened to it? So I'm not sure that this is one that I feel safe kicking down the road very far. Is that a fair assessment, Chief?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, I forwarded a document that I've sent possibly at a Board of Selectmen's meeting several years ago. It was a public safety study from Northborough where the consultant basically recommended retiring vehicles altogether at 100,000. He said, I'm free to entertain. We do some repair work and we try to get as much life out of them as we can. But when you're hitting that 100,000 mark for what they see over 5 years in constant patrol, yeah, that's definitely the case. It does become a safety issue.
And even if we order them now, we're looking at least a year out before we're likely to even get them?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me just correct that. We can't order them right till July 1st. So it's 6 months from the order date, Chief. Is that
correct? In fact, in non-COVID, I was hoping to order them if we had an annual March town meeting. and we got the okay just to go with our supplier and say, order them, have them on the lot and be ready to go. So sometime in July, we'd get them as soon as possible. But that's not going to be the case this year. And like I said, they do have supply line issues, which I don't think are going to be corrected, anytime soon.
Any other questions on the cruisers for the chief? Go ahead, Kathy.
So this is trivial, but Chief, why does the person going to the academy have to drive a cruiser?
He transports equipment. He transports firearms. It's probably
Okay,
not.
all right.
It's probably not required, but I think we'd be looking at a mileage reimbursement. I'm more comfortable just having the recruit. We're introducing him to the department. He comes, he checks in with his training officer. He picks up his cruiser. He needs it for several weeks anyway for driver training. I'm more comfortable with that than trying to save a few dollars on an older line car than having them take their own.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the cruisers? I'll just add, just based on my experience, and I shared this with Chief Paulus, they don't have take-home cruisers except for the chief himself. That is very rare. Some departments have not only all command staff, but they have multiple officers with special credentials that bring home vehicles, which if you think about it, right, there's no requirement to live in your community. So depending on how far an officer lives. So I just figured I'd point that out is, the miles that are going on these cars theoretically are for 100% police business. The only one that is actually commuting and putting miles on a car is the chief, which is very standard for a chief to have their own commuting vehicle, given he's on call all the time. I don't know, Chief, if you want to add anything to that. I did some comparisons to other departments and know that we're in a pretty tight ship on that element.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes a picture tells 1,000 words. So if anybody wants to stop by and, we'll go over each car one by one. Always welcome at the police station.
While we have the chief, any questions on the defibrillators? Because those are still in the capital plan as well. All right, Chief, I would run them while everyone's quiet.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Chief.
All right. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place with the agenda, but I'm also trying to be cognizant of the department head times, especially those, especially our next person, given the amount of plowing that's been done recently in this town and doesn't look like it's going to end. So Karen, I'm bringing you in if you're ready. Karen, you're in. There she is.
There you go. Hello.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
All right. So Karen, we have you on the agenda kind of twofold tonight. One is I think you need to walk everyone through the email that you had sent in requesting a discussion on the Newton Street water main. So we'll deal with that first, given that's new to everyone here. And then two, after we go through the discussion on that, we'll kind of just ask if anyone has any remaining questions on your FY22 capital items before we kind of prioritize some things in our own mind.
Okay.
So why don't you walk through the water main first?
Okay, so as part of our master plan for water, we haven't really completed it yet because I started as they were doing it. We've always been looking at what we need to add to make the system more robust. But we do have certain areas that we know are weak with pipes or older pipes. So I had them reassess some of it and say, is there anything we need to replace? And what really has happened is if you guys know about the Ashland Southborough interconnection, so Ashland's paying to have our Hosmer station upgraded. They put some piping in and they did some work at the overlook tank. as part of that project, as we were working on it, we were doing some flow tests and we realized that the Newton Street, we've checked it 4 or 5 times now at this point, like triple checked it, quadruple checked it. It's actually the pipe has basically it has enough tuberculation in it at this point that it almost seems like there's a valve shut, but there's not. Like we've checked everything. So our interest is to replace that pipe to make sure it's a 1931 old cast pipe. And even doing the downtown work when we were doing Main Street, we needed to shut off areas. And once we got to the east side of the railroad tracks, you know, we found that the pipe, that pipe, which is going to be replaced as part of the downtown project, had a lot of tuberculation and was in not great shape. So what we're looking to do is replace that piece, that pipe on Main Street, Newton Street, sorry. So the project is $2 million to do the whole thing, and that's all in with the engineering. We have the ability, I think at this point, we could just do the engineering, just get the engineering money, get it designed, and then next year go for the money for the to actually do the work. We have a little stretch that I'd want to do as part of the downtown project at least. So if we made it, if, you know, people can't decide about the 2 million, if we wanted to go with 200,000 maybe at this point, get us started, and then we'd carry it from there down the rest of it. But that would be, the full design would be done and just that piece would be replaced as part of the downtown project. But because that does lead to the tank, the water tank, it's really a very important pipe to the system. And it's only a 10-inch, like I said, 1931 cast. It'd be replaced with 12-inch. And because really what's happening right now, Overlook should come out, the water should be in and out both pipes going down Overlook Drive and Newton Street. And it really seems to go down Overlook and not necessarily down Newton as much, because Newton seems to get caught up. So it's just not a robust pipe anymore. So that's why we want to replace it.
All right, I'm gonna start with you, Kathy. Any questions on that?
So Karen, this would come out of the water fund, fully funded from the water fund, correct? The water enterprise fund.
That's correct.
Okay. And are you saying there is an economy of scale to do it all now as part of an extension to the Main Street work? Is that what you're trying to tell us, rather than break it up into 2 parts?
It's not a problem to break it up into 2 parts, I don't think. The economy of scale probably won't be to do it all with Main Street, or wouldn't. All right, so if you did the whole thing of Newton Street with Main Street, or you just did that as 2 pieces, I don't think you'll see a big difference. If you split Newton Street up into 2 pieces, then you will see a bit of a difference, because basically more because of the design work is going to be front-ended on something.
But as far as the cost, as far as what would hit the water enterprise fund for fiscal year 22, you're still going to bond this. So whether you do the engineering in fiscal year 22 and then do the work later, it doesn't sound like there's that much of a difference in numbers between the 2 years. I mean, Brian, you're here. We're bonding this. I mean, we're talking about a bond if it's $2 million, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the question is, do you break it up into parts, right? Or do you just try to get the whole project approved in one fell swoop?
Well, that was my idea, to get it done in one fell swoop, the authorization at least. Then she can just draw it down.
Okay.
I don't know why you wouldn't bid it all at once.
That would be better. It would. Easier, I guess, but more.
So who can speak to the impact on the ratepayers? Right? If it's not impacting the general fund, right? You know, some of us pay water bills, some of us don't, right? But a general ratepayer, what are they looking at?
So right now, that's one of the problems. We're looking at the rates to make sure that we're in line, because we were behind before when we turned into the enterprise fund. And And one of the problems we have right now to just, I mean, we were supposed to do a 5% on the tiers this year. And I'm pretty sure that we will need to do that. And that did anticipate a project, a $2 million project coming down the pike. One of the problems we have right now, though, is that we pay the percent. So say the MWRA sells 100 billion gallons of water, right? And we have 340 million is about what we have of that. So Boston has like 400 million or like 4 billion or whatever, some big piece of it, right? Boston's not using the same anymore. So what's happening is our percentage, even if we don't use more, our percentage of the whole usage is up, right? And so we're looking to see how that's going to affect the rates more than anything right now, because that kind of sits on how is Boston going to react? Are they going to continue to have a lot of people not working in the offices? You know, are they going to still have a lot of telecommuting? We don't know if this is going to readjust after the pandemic back to normal, or if it's going to kind of stay for a while slow, where then we will be paying the MWRA more than we have been. So if you look, our budget went up a lot this year, partly because of the drought, but then also because Boston's paying less of the overall MWRA bill than they had to before. Does that make sense to anybody?
Kathy, any other questions from you?
No, it makes sense, Karen. I'm not sure we can go much further with that piece tonight. I think we just got to decide whether we would like to see this done piecemeal or all at once. It sounds like it has to be done.
Go to you, Jeff.
Sorry. Can you just help me understand a little bit more of the engineering study, what that would accomplish?
So we have a master plan, and that's just being updated. So part of updating that this time included dealing with old pipes or weak areas in the system, not just redundancy, but actual pipes that were old and we seem to be having a lot of breaks in. So and just to prioritize which of those pipes should be replaced before there's some redundancy put in, or before this or that. So we were just trying to prioritize. So that's what the master plan is. The engineering money for the project is just the design oversight, construction oversight, bidding phase, and all that. So that's like a $65,000 piece that we have to pay regardless of how we split the project. That'll be that way. It'll be $65,000.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve?
I don't think I have any questions. I'm just not up to date enough on it.
Okay. Joe?
I would love to agree with my colleague right there, but at the same time, I have a couple questions. The Newton Street pipe, which way is the water flowing and where is it going?
So water in the system tends to flow. So there, especially, it flows into the tank and then it comes out of the tank, right?
Okay.
So when we pump in. So a lot of the areas do only kind of go one way. And then when we flush, we really stir it up, right? Because it's the way the usage comes and based on where they are near the tank. By chance, Newton Street should be getting flow coming like from the tank and then to the tank. So it should actually get a lot of flow. What's happening is that it's actually not, right? So it seems like water is actually coming down Main Street and heading towards Framingham Road for some reason, and it's not really coming up from Framingham Road or really necessarily down from the Overlook Hill very well.
So it's actually causing flow problems.
Yes. So that one of the problems we have with those older pipes is that because the tank helps with flow, right, and pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So near a tank, you should have good flow, and you should have not up at the top of the tank, but at the bottom of the tank, you should have good pressure. And Newton Street's not really getting either of those right now.
What would be the cost of failure? If we have a failure, sort of a critical failure, what would be the cost on that to just deal with it?
it would probably be the same, right? Because you would have to, I mean, we'd fix the break and then we'd end up doing the whole project of that we're talking about.
It's going to be more if we wait. And the pipes,
Yes.
has it been looked at in terms of what the chances are of critical failure in the next 24 months or so?
No, it hasn't really been assessed in that way. It's more of a overall just quality or robustness issue, right?
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Welcome.
Andrew,
Karen, is there a way to incorporate this into the sidewalks for Newton Street? I don't know if you could put the water main under the sidewalks or something like that, but.
That's why I was saying it might be worth doing if we wanted to do just the engineering to at least get enough money to do the section that was going to be under the sidewalk or at the sidewalk.
I was thinking more about the shared streets project to do the whole thing.
I don't know that the shared streets or the complete streets would work with that. They'll pay for a sidewalk to go in, but and like if you needed drainage for that sidewalk, but water is really just they don't consider that to be, that would be extraneous to it, and you'd have to pay separate.
I was saying more like if you did both projects, right? So would you have any economies of scale or any benefit to, like, if you were putting in a sidewalk where there wasn't a sidewalk and you put the water main under the sidewalk, but you also got the sidewalk funds for the sidewalk alone?
Yeah, actually that would, because you wouldn't have to pay for the patch, right? So you'd be able to pave it. So there, yes, there would be for that, at least that section. It's just not a very big section.
Okay, so the complete streets grant one, the 400,000, whatever we were looking for, that wasn't the entirety of Newton Street. That was just a portion of it.
Correct.
Okay.
So that, yeah, it's kind of doing downtown too.
Gotcha.
anything else, Andrew?
Brian, how long would we bond this over?
20.
20 years?
20
Not
years?
two.
No, like 2 years? That's really, that's not a good life cycle. 20 years.
20
Yeah.
years at 2%, it's 121,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have enough money in the fund to pay for it, so it's not like that's an issue. So I don't see really why you'd kick the can down the road, right? Get it done in one fell swoop. And again, Karen, if we can do it as part of, while the truck's there, if we want to do some sidewalk work while we're doing patching or something, maybe we can, kill two birds with one stone with that.
Yep, no, it would be better just to, the more you can bundle, partly the better the contract's better. And then also people kind of don't just end one project and then start right into another one and,
Yep.
Okay, Lisa?
Thank you. Andrew, actually, Andrew and I were on the same path on bonding. Karen, just one question. You said that this is replacing something else that you had on your master plan?
Yes.
So can you just talk a little bit about that? So the item that you had on the master plan, in what year did you have that versus, having to do this year? Was it a couple years down the road or?
I believe we had it as a 22 project, and it was going to be the water tank, actually, because that keeps coming up in the forefront. And but right now, fortifying that versus fortifying these old pipes, I think the pipes are a little more important right now.
Okay, so where would you kick that, the water tank, if you had to guess in your master plan? How far down the line would you then put that?
I'm assuming that will end up out, because everything has to be funded through the water. I think we're probably like 5 years out at least.
Okay, and that's not going to create a problem?
No. It's one of those things that as the town develops, we have to keep moving towards getting that. But I don't think there'll be. It's something that we've done a lot of other improvements to the system at this point between the pumping stations and everything. So we've really still built and worked on fixing this system up and getting it to be robust and a lot of redundancy. So every little thing we do makes the tank, a little bit okay. It's not as like in our face problem.
Okay, That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
And Karen, which tank was that?
It's supposed to be up on Fairview Hill off of Sarson Stone.
Are there any other questions for Karen?
I've got it. I want to go back to what Lisa just said, just to be clear. Karen, are you saying that your plan is to basically revise the master plan to accelerate Newton Street that you would have done in fiscal year? You said 22. Did you mean 23? Because we're talking fiscal year 22 right now.
So we weren't aware of how problematic Newton Street was until we started working on that tank, and we saw that we couldn't get the flow. Like
So
the flow.
we get that. I'm just trying to understand, are we adding costs to the Water Enterprise Fund for fiscal year 22 potentially? Or are you proposing to replace a project already slated for fiscal year 22 with the Newton Street project?
Yes, that's what we're doing. So we have a project that was about $2 million that was going to happen then, and we've moved it. That'll go out and Newton Street comes in.
So I do think this is like, Karen, we probably need to understand your broader plan for the water, right? Because let's face it, that water tank wasn't on our radar for this town meeting either.
Okay, so maybe it might have been in 23 then. I'd have to look at the actual what the water had, and I kind of kept pushing that out, waiting for the master plan to be done too. But at this point, it was in the works in terms of when we did the rate study to be done.
Okay. So if, let's just say everyone here was supportive and then town meeting was supportive and all other boards that vote on budgets are supportive, is it going to cause a different rate that the Board of Selectmen adopt in March than you would have recommended? Like if this project goes forward or not?
I don't think it will. I don't think it should. The problem might be though, is that project in conjunction with the issues of Boston and the pandemic and the change in water might create the problem. So that so if we didn't do a project, right, then we're only dealing with the pandemic water issue, which we didn't know about when we did the last rate study, right? So now we've got this pandemic water issue plus a project. So it will compound.
And they're going to set the rates this March for what period?
We're supposed to look at it every year. So it'll be for a year.
Okay, but starting when?
So the water you use in March, once it will be at the new rate. So the March, April, May.
March 1st.
Yeah. So what you pay, we read in May, June, you'd get a bill, it's due in July. So that June bill would be at the new rate. It's the same way we did it last time. They voted and that the water you were using at that time was at the new rate.
Can you set water rates more than once a year if you needed to? Can you change them more than once a year?
Yes.
But what you're assuming you don't do that though, what you're looking at is FY22 would proceed as planned, but FY23 is where you could have the hiccup because of not only this capital item plus the Boston percentage allocation. Is that, I just want to make sure we're clear of what year.
Yes, so I don't know how the bonding works with that. Like we wouldn't be using all of it right away, so I don't know how that works. But
Brian, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it really depends on her cash flow. It's big enough, we'd probably draw it down a couple of times, I imagine. Maybe split it. So it could be 23, 24, could be over a couple of years.
So what you're saying, Brian, is you could issue a bond for 1.2 up front and then issue another bond for 800 as part of something else the town's doing?
Right.
Okay.
But Jason, the impact of COVID and the fact that Boston is emptied out is now. That's not 22, 23. She's dealing with that right now as far as Southborough absorbing more of the cost.
Yeah, that's, I understand. Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to understand is the impact of the capital item in front of us to a ratepayer. Because obviously it's out, the Boston issue is outside of our control, and we're all going to feel that burden to the extent we have water at our house. Right? So I guess in the interest of 5B on our agenda, does everyone want to kind of take this under advisement and vote at the next meeting? Do you need more information from Karen? Do you want to vote now? I just need a temperature of where people think they're at.
I would say, Jason, we could vote. I think we could vote now. I just had one more quick question, if I could.
Go ahead.
Karen, I just pulled up the capital plan. And so for 22, we had the 2 million for Flag Road. So that was what you swapped out?
That's what I swapped out.
Yep. And so,
I-
and so, you know, I'm not sure where Newton Street was, but say Newton was 2027 or something or later.
It wasn't even on our radar. That's the problem. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other one, the water tank was on for 2026.
Okay.
For 4.8. That makes sense.
Okay, so I'm getting confused. Is the proposal to push Flag then and put Newton there? Is that what you're trying to do, Karen? That's what you
Yes.
prefer to do?
Yes.
And then put Flag the next year?
We'll wait till we get the master plan at that time. Once we have the master plan, that'll prioritize us through, and it'll tell us Flag, it'll tell us the tank, and it'll readjust all those capital projects.
And you have no doubt it's a pipe problem and not a tank problem causing the lack of flow on Newton Street?
Yes, it's definitely the pipe, and that is what we found. Yeah, we get the tank inspected, and that's easy to inspect. We actually have divers go in it. It's hard to see what's going on underground.
Is anyone else not comfortable to vote?
I guess I just don't remember this. Have we already voted on Flag Road, the $2 million?
No, that's what I'm saying is that there was nothing on our radar screen from water fund for FY22 other than the hook lift truck and a pickup truck.
It was on the water fund tab, Jason. It just wasn't on our combined one.
Yeah, but we've never talked about it as a capital planning.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm just saying, you know, it was technically there.
So I'd prefer, when are we going to meet again, Jason? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
I'm not wedded, but I prefer to wait to vote in 2 weeks till we've got time to really kind of sort this out a little bit more.
I have no objection to that.
I agree with Kathy on that.
Because, you know, this is really not our issue, but I'm still going to say this. For years and years, and I'm guilty of this, advisory paid no attention to the water fund. We basically said, what ratepayers going to pay it? It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. You want to keep the rates down with the water fund too for people, just like you want to keep taxes down. So I'd like to spend a little more time on this and make sure we make a good decision here.
Anyone opposed to that? All right. I think Karen's talking to someone else.
I'm back.
Okay. Do you have a few more minutes, or do you want, if anyone has any other questions, because we're going to 5F on our agenda, prioritization of FY22, which is all items you've spoken to us many times before. But do you have a few minutes, or do you need to run?
I can stay. I did talk to Kathy already about what our priorities were, being the hook lift truck, the diesel truck, and then the chipper. And then the other two items, if we needed to move those off, that was fine. So I don't know if you need more than that.
Explain why with the plows. Start with the 3 plows.
With the plows, we actually refurbished them. Did some work on them, welding and sandblasting and stuff to get the rust, get them back together. So we did 3 out of the ones we have. I think we have 7 ultimately that we're trying to do. And I think we bought some years with them. So it's the least relevant problem. And then as far as our the trailer goes, that's not we need a more robust trailer for some of the stuff we're carrying. But we can do that. We can do that through through some reinforcements and stuff if we need to. So again, that's something that we can put off actually getting another one, because if we make one now and we kind of do some reinforcing and all, we can basically go down the line and ultimately still have utilized trailers. So we could manage fine.
Karen, when you say your priorities hook lift, diesel, and chipper, is that are you putting the road maintenance and sidewalk maintenance to the side? That's a priority?
She just
No,
assumed
no,
that's a done deal, Jeff, that that's there. It's got to be there every year. So she's just assuming that. was done.
I'm just curious. I wanted to confirm that was the case.
No, road maintenance has to stay, please.
Yeah.
About the sidewalk.
We've gone back and forth about the sidewalk as in terms of we don't have a set project right this second. We have plenty of things we can use it on, but if it's not the year to start that, it's not the year to start that. The town's gotta, we can't all drink from the trough. It's not, our heads don't even fit.
Jason, can I ask one question?
Sure.
Following up on the truck. Karen, which truck? I have two different diesel trucks. The one from the general fund or the water fund? Are you
The one
asking
from
to
the
keep?
general fund, because the
Okay.
water one would be out of the water fund.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
So she's still saying leave both of those, Lisa.
Right, no.
Okay.
I got it. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
And Karen, you wanted to keep the bodies, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, wait, that went into
What?
the budget. You mean the body, the body maintenance?
The
That
truck
went
service
into,
bodies.
that went into the budget.
It's in the operating budget.
Yes.
Are you talking about the pickup diesel service body highway 1210? Is that what you're talking about, Andrew?
Yeah, it's like two of them, I think. Hold on, I gotta look at the.
70,000, Karen, in case that rings a bell.
There's two
Oh, no,
diesel
that's-
trucks still in here. That's not what she's talking about. They're still in.
Right. That's, so the diesel trucks, the actual service body trucks. So it's just, that's the type of truck it is. Those, I need one in, which is general fund, one that's in the water fund. There used to be one that was like body work. And I thought that's what you were talking about, and that went into the budget.
We changed that last year. Advisory didn't want to see that in capital. Remember, Andrew, so she's now putting that in her operating budget as far as says painting, getting the rust off, whatever.
I just thought for whatever reason, there was something about service bodies in the budget somewhere.
It's one of the diesels.
That's how it's labeled. But it's a new truck, basically, Karen, right?
Yes, yes. It's
So-
with the service body on it instead of
Yeah.
being a pickup or a flatbed.
Okay, so those are the diesel vehicles. It's
Yes.
not just the body that goes on a truck. Okay,
That's correct.
okay, now I get it.
All right, I'm going to let Karen go unless anyone has any final questions.
All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it.
All right, have a
Bye-bye.
good night. Bye.
Bye. All right. I appreciate everyone bearing with me. I know everyone had different schedules tonight. So I'm going to go back to the top of item 5. We've dealt with our joint meeting with the Library Board of Trustees. We've talked about the DPW item for Newton Street water main. So what I want to do is I want to go through these next 3 items quickly that we're either going to take a vote on or are new that we haven't officially voted on. And then what we're going to do is go to the prioritization of everything in the capital plan and talk through that. And then we'll go through the other items that are on the agenda. So on the fire tanker, remember we've taken one motion. So in 5C, we've taken one motion to put it on the plan, but we didn't put an amount. And we've discussed it now the last 2 meetings. So we do need to decide on a path forward. So we've heard from Brian what he would do in terms of a bonding if it was authorized in FY22. Approving it in FY22 does not impact the rate and solve some of the problems. It just creates potential issues in the future. You do have 2 funding mechanism sources, whether you fund it through the ambulance fund or you increase the contribution of the ambulance fund to the general fund, you kind of get to the same answer. in terms of covering that bond payment if we did decide to move forward with it. And then I did forward correspondence to the entire committee that Chief Achilles has completed the grant application. But I do think we need to vote assuming no grant is received, because I think we're all, very happy to remove this at some point if a grant magically shows up and figuring out the matching fund. So it's really, I think we just need to call the ball. I don't know that we're going to get any more information on it. And it's really just an understanding of whether we want a placeholder for this in the warrant. Obviously, it's still subject to conversation with Board of Selectmen, still conversation with advisory. But at this point, I think it's incumbent upon us to make some recommendation. So I guess, why don't I start with Jeff? If you have any strong views one way or another, just so we can try to figure out if there is consensus, split vote, just so we can figure out how to move this one way or another.
So if we were not to get the grant, there would be no impact for 2022, you're saying?
Correct, right, Brian, by the time you get delivery of the truck, you wouldn't take out any sort of long-term debt on that. He said correct, but you're saying correct, right? Okay.
But would you need it on the capital plan then, or
Yes.
do you, okay, because I was gonna say at the very least you could do, I think Andrew's point last week, set up something for the funding from a grant perspective, and then
Problem is the chief cannot order the vehicle until it's funded. So either you have to have funding through a grant or funding through town meeting authorization. Now, we can help direct how long he should wait. Like, should he wait 2 grant cycles, for example? I think that's certainly something that could be discussed. So you could get authorization. Let's just say you don't get the grant this year, town meeting authorizes it, but you ask him to wait until the next AFG grant cycle to actually place the order and remit payment. That is an option. So then you're not waiting 2 town meetings, but we obviously don't know how this is gonna pan out from a grant perspective.
And then the number, Brian, was about $20,000 or $30,000 a year. Is that what it was when you bonded it?
30.
It's a little higher than
30.
that, yeah.
35 is what's in the draft minutes that we're gonna talk about in a little
30
bit.
to 30 to 35 is the minutes.
Yeah.
And then my only other question is, when we think about the ambulance fund, how much, from the negotiations that the chief has done and really created some excess funds in there. I mean, to me, this is a good reason to use that fund, because he's done a lot of hard work for the benefit of the town to increase our top line revenue in that fund. So to me, it seems like a good reason to be able to use the ambulance fund to
To be clear, it's not not to nitpick on words, Jeff, but it's not negotiation. It's just rate setting.
Collections.
Yeah, rate setting and collections. And they are much closer to on track post-COVID. I mean, we lost 3 months of ambulance revenue is the way I would think about most towns dealt with. They just didn't go anywhere for medical calls for those couple of months that we were all in one spot.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that we did a lot of hard work, and it's really paid dividends for the town. So I think we need to figure out a way to use that for the benefit of the town as well.
Okay. Steve, do you have any questions, anything to add at this point? I know you may have listened to 1 or 2 of those meetings.
No, I don't have anything at this point. Thank
Okay.
you.
Joe?
I would say that I'm generally inclined. As you said, we're kicking the financial costs into 23. Maybe with that extra grant cycle, that might even push it a little farther. But this is one of those things. You don't know until you need it. If you don't have it when you need it, so I'm inclined to say yes.
Okay, Andrew?
I would say my only concern with the ambulance fund is we can't even afford the pumper payment with the ambulance fund this year, right?
You talking about the current year, FY21?
Or 22?
Depends on the revenue, Andrew.
Yeah, I thought the forecast is we didn't include it in the budget for next year, right? Brian, that debt service is in the general fund?
No.
No, I think it is in the ambulance fund. I'm gonna check right now. Let's see.
There's definitely enough in the ambulance fund for next year.
Yeah, it is close, but it's there.
Might be more inclined if we pushed it out for 2 grant cycles. I'm still not sold on we've never had a tanker truck, at least as far as I've been here and remember, that we need, a brand spanking new tanker truck for 400,000. But, I think applying for a grant, they only do new, so you can't get a used. So that makes sense. But if it was on the town's dime, I would say probably maybe revisiting that.
Yeah, so we have about 80, just so everyone is aware, we have about 87,000 of cushion in the ambulance fund for FY 22, assuming we hit 500K of collections this year.
Jason, when we talked about this last, you were extremely doubtful of $500,000. You chastised me for wanting to bring some more money out of it to use for the general fund.
Well, we're only on pace for 452. But you got to look at, they collected double in December than they did in November. And you got to look at, like, call volumes now are way up. Like, look at the chief's monthly activity reports he publishes. He's back to where he was pre-COVID.
All right.
Winter months are busier from a ambulance perspective. So it's not a slam dunk, right? I think people need to assume that the 35 is going to go in the tax rate in FY 23 and hope for the best. That's how I'm thinking about it, at least. I do think, right, post-COVID, I think this thing's going to right the ship. But if I were you, I would think about this as 35K in the tax rate for the next 15 years.
Yeah, I think my opinion is still the same. Yeah, put in the grant match and then revisit it after if we don't get it.
Back to the top, Lisa.
I'm inclined to put it on. I think based on the conversations we had with the chief and it's not putting it off until 2023 and with the other grant cycle as well, just as Joe said. So I'm inclined to putting it on.
Kathy?
So here, I'm going to be the contrarian. I would like to see us have the truck. My neighborhood is most affected by not having water, but I want us this one time to move heaven and earth to find a different way to pay for this truck. And I'm not convinced we have exhausted the regionalization ideas that we came up with. And I re-listened to the meeting to make sure I was right about what got said. I just think that this is one time we shouldn't take the easier route, that we should exhaust everything that we possibly can to share this cost among towns, get the grant, et cetera. So I think we need it. I think it belongs on capital plan at some point, but I don't want to see it hit the tax rate. And using the ambulance fund, I mean, this money's all fungible. I'd much rather see the ambulance fund, more money being pulled out to offset the cost that we're incurring to generate the ambulance fund receipts. We're not reimbursing ourselves for all of the cost of the people who are running the ambulances. $290,000 doesn't come close to that. So I'd much rather see the ambulance fund used as a steady source of income going forward, more than even we're doing now to reimburse the town to bring down the expenses of the town and not use this just to continually fund equipment. So ambulance fund just bothers me as far as the way we're looking at this. We're incurring all these costs outside this. We don't get reimbursed for that. 290 does not do that. So I don't want to see this truck go through the ambulance fund, nor do I want to make a decision I'm really convinced we have done everything we can as far as trying to do things that we're not used to doing, we're not comfortable doing, which is find a different way to do it. We've really got to try to find ways to think outside the box if we're going to ever get out of this year after year after year process we're going through where, we can't add anything new. We have to pare down everything that we do just because there's just no new revenue coming into this town. So I am going to vote against the pumper truck being added now. I'm for it, but I would like to see us find a different way to pay for it for sure before we add it.
So on the regionalization, what more do you want the chief to do? Because I think we owe him at least that.
I don't know, Jason. I mean, I don't know the other, the towns we know. Hopkinton's got one. We know no one else does.
Northborough has, so think about our neighboring communities. Northborough has one. Hopkinton has
He didn't
one.
say that night. He said Hopkinton that night. He didn't say Northborough.
Northborough
Yeah,
has one.
I missed it. Okay, Northborough's got one. So it's Marlborough, Framingham, and possibly Ashland and Westboro, right?
So Ashland just funded a new $30 million public safety building.
Yep.
Hopkinton's trying to build a new public safety building. Framingham has no use for a tanker. Marlborough has no use for a tanker. They actually carry less water on an engine than we do. Northborough and Hopkinton already have one. And most other towns that have a tanker already are adding a second. I'm not advocating for that, don't get me wrong, but it's just a change in approach. And I would think, with all due respect to the chief, my argument would be, obviously you have the water supply district, but does anyone realize that if one fire truck goes out of service, this town has one fire truck? Like one pumper truck that's going to show up at your house until you get mutual aid. And you heard his, we're the only town that has that. Towns a quarter of our size only don't have that. So I guess,
Jason, you're the fireman in this group, so let me ask you a question. Mutual aid.
Mhm.
The minute you've got notice of a fire, and you're down one truck, like your example, do you then immediately pick up the phone and call for mutual aid? Do you know to do it right away?
yeah, if the dispatcher's on his or her game.
Because where I am, the Framingham trucks can get there faster than Southborough. In some cases, that Framingham station is actually not that far away. So I think it actually get there much faster. So I don't know that convinces me, as long as we know that we can get the mutual aid trucks going fast. Okay, so if we don't think another town wants to share with us, why would we not want to share with Hopkinton and or Northborough? Why don't we go the other way?
I think we would. I think the
No, I'm
chief
just
is
saying,
going to.
go buy a truck, ask them if we can't contribute something to be able to use their pumper truck. And maybe you're going to say, well, you can use it anyway, mutual aid, they'd come.
Well, pumper, I think, is the easiest one to solve. That's why I would never advocate to add a third pumper. Right? But this is a special purpose truck that could be used as a backup.
So I'm using the wrong word. What do we call this one? The 2000?
This is a tanker. This is a tanker.
All right, sorry.
Jason, I mean, the pumper's got 1,000 gallons on it already. All we're doing is adding 1,000. It's not like we're bringing in a 5,000 gallon tanker truck. Why can't we just roll 2 pumpers?
Because we don't have 2 pumpers to roll.
Yeah, we do.
So,
right? We have engine 23 and engine 22.
Assuming both are in service. Go look at the chief's repair budget.
Well, we've gotten a brand new
one.
Way, and 22 is only 4 years old, 3 years old, 18.
2017 and a brand new one. We should have ordered a brand new one with a 2,000 gallon tank. Then we don't need a tanker truck.
But he mentioned having multiple vehicles to get a cycle of constant water supply as well. Right, that's important.
Yeah.
But
I'm not gonna do the chief's job of explaining fire science again. I think he articulated it pretty well at the last meeting in terms of you have to look at resourcing and you have to look at maneuverability of vehicles. That tanker can roll with one person on it and be incredibly functional. A pumper cannot roll with one person on it. Go try to back a tank, any one of those trucks up a long driveway in this town. You're asking for trouble if you don't have a maneuverable vehicle. So I'm hearing a split decision on it.
But just to be clear, I'm for getting the water supply improved in this town. He made a very good case, and he made a case that convinced me that we shouldn't just try to extend Framingham pipes and onto Pine Hill Road because there's other areas that would benefit from this truck. I'm there with that. I just want to know that we have truly exhausted thinking outside the box as far as how to pay for this. And if we approve it now, we won't do that. We're done. So I just like to spend, I wish there was just more work that would be spent to make sure we can find either a grant So wait to see if we get the grant or not. And Andrew, we can always use reserve fund for the match, and or make sure that we really can't work out a deal with Framingham, Marlboro, Westboro, or Ashland.
Kathy, I don't know what to go back and tell the chief to work out.
And I don't either, Jason. But I don't think-
So I stood here last time and made a pretty.
One thing that you could ask the chief is, from a mutual aid perspective, how many times in the last, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 years have we done mutual aid for a tanker? I think that would be a statistic that I don't have today that would help.
And I would argue it's not relevant. Because I think you're going to totally change how you attack a fire in this town by having the asset, is I guess what I would say.
And given, it's kind of special that we've got you on here that is also a fireman. So I defer a lot to you, Jason, as far as what you think. And I'm agreeing with pretty much everything you think. I just want to make sure, and I'm not there yet, that we have truly, because we're going to have to start regionalizing some stuff if we're going to ever get this budget to the point that we can actually be comfortable and do some new stuff. I mean, you know, I'm just so tired of every year doing this. We never get to add anything new because we're stuck with the same problem, starting 9%, trying to get down to something that sounds reasonable. I'm only one person. It looks like the other 5 are fine doing this. So I just go ahead and vote. And let's see where this goes.
Listen, can I just respond to Kathy? So Kathy, I agree with you. If there was another way to fund this, but after the chief coming in and going over the statistics he gave us and knowing the issues that we have on the Pine Hill area, as well as other areas in town, I almost, and again, this is me personally, I almost think it's irresponsible of us, knowing the chief has come to us and we knew there was a concern. And as long as I've been on the board and before that, I know we've been talking about the water issue down there. And I would rather not put it off and take the chance that it only takes one fire to destroy somebody's home and somebody's life. That I think there's a tremendous value in knowing there's an issue and trying to find the solution to it. And I agree, Kathy, I wish there was another way. And I think there's a lot of things we could think outside the box on, but for me, this is a life safety device almost. And to me, it's, I would rather, knowing there's an issue, take care of it than to kick the can as we've done for a zillion years here in town. So if there is a way to think outside the box and find something else, I'd certainly be open to it. But I'm just afraid that it's only going to take one fire and destroying one family's livelihood and life, and knowing we could have done something and we didn't. So that's just from my perspective.
It's hard to argue against that, Lisa.
Jason, you might know better than anybody else. What's our capacity for dealing with more than one event at the same time at this point?
Well, they have a minimum staffing of 4, maximum of 5 on a shift. And that doesn't include the chief whenever he's around. And then they have callback personnel too. So you're looking at what that really means, Joe, is it means 2 pieces of apparatus out the door.
Because like, for instance, they showed up at my neighbor's house today. So if something else was happening across town, you know, do we have the capacity to fight anything across town? And it sounds like, you know, we're handcuffed at that point. So if they ship out one truck to, and even if it turns out to be just a spoof event, and it just so happens there's something on the other side of town, that could be, that sounds
Things happen in twos, unfortunately, in the fire service. That's why stats are somewhat deceiving. They usually happen both at the same time, and then you do nothing else for hours on end. I can't speak to why that happens, but every town experiences it. It all goes to staffing, Joe, right? Usually a commanding officer would make a decision of whether they could break away. Like maybe 2 trucks came to your neighbor's house, but only 1 was needed, right? Can you break that asset away quickly? And is that asset functional enough to be able to meet the needs of whatever the second call is?
Because they were there for at least an hour and a half. So
yeah, so they probably had mutual aid sitting at the station, is my guess.
I'm not saying anybody this is a reason to do this, and I do agree with Kathy. I'd love to see us find another way to do it. I just don't know if that's going to happen.
Kathy would probably attest that I am a huge proponent of regionalization. In many areas, I think you all know, I sat here, like, that was pretty tough for me to make that stance last meeting about the grant, and how to push that. But I think that's our best option. And I'm hoping this discussion is for naught. And, we have a nice, press release from the federal government, in 3 months, because, that hopefully is the answer. But I think we need to have a plan B to be responsible and say, hey, chief, we're supporting this year or we're not. But I think we owe kind of an answer there, one way or another.
Have we shut off the pilot program completely in terms of being an option? I don't know where we're going with that, but
No. And so I just don't think it's appropriate at this meeting to talk a whole lot about that, but it's an ongoing, very timely question. There are meetings taking place in the next 2 weeks. And if we, go ahead and agree to this, does it take some of the pressure off maybe one or the other institutions who might be willing to buy something like they have in the past versus committing to some type of annuity pilot payment? That's all I want to say at this point. So I think that this doesn't help that case either, but I'm not really wedded to that one.
So I guess what I would ask before we take, Mark, you're unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
The only thing I was going to say, it's kind of moved past it now, is simply if we're going to get into talking about, how we attack fires, how we do things. I respect your expertise, Jason, but the chief should be here speaking to his operation and what he does and what he thinks he needs to do it.
But he did, Mark, and he made a very compelling case. I think there's no one here that seems to not think we need the tanker. Is in my case only, I think it's just a question of timing. I would push it back a year. I wouldn't put it on the fiscal year 22 capital plan. But it sounds like the other 5 want to, so that's fine.
Andrew,
So is there any other discussion on that?
Andrew, were you on it for fiscal 22 or are you in Kathy's?
I
book?
was on it for fiscal 22 for the grant match, but not for $400,000 expenditure.
Is time going to help anyone, or does someone want to make a motion?
My problem is that I can sort of float either way on this for 22 or 23. Like I said, it's a timing issue. I mean, you never know when you're going to need it, and if you needed it, you didn't have it. Versus, 1 year pushing out.
yeah. And my thought is, you never know where you're going to need it. And I'd have a real hard time from a conscious perspective if we, for example, put new rugs in a library for $150,000, but didn't decide to go ahead with the tanker because of something like that. It's more aesthetically driven than anything else.
I mean, just to play devil's advocate, I'm for the tanker, but the fire and the police, the town has been very supportive over the years. We added 2 more officers, new cruisers, I think we're on board with. We brand new pumper truck, even though we only have a 5-year-old one. We're talking about a new ladder truck, which is over $1 million. We just did the public safety building. So I think part of our job is to understand, there's other people and other things in town. I mean, fire safety is obviously important, but, schools need money, Neary needs to be redone. There's other areas in town that should be looked at. I'm perfectly for a tanker truck as long as it's fiscally responsive and efficient with our funds. I just think a $400,000 brand new vehicle, when there's perfectly good used ones for $200,000, just doesn't make much sense. But I think you might have the vote.
All right. So for purpose,
Do we have to make a recommendation in terms of how it's funded though? Can we, is that part of our responsibility? If you look at our capital plan,
no, but it's part of our responsibility to understand the overall impact to the town, right?
Yeah.
And not right, because part of the issues we're having this year is debt has been level of service pretty much the last couple of years, but the impact of certain projects that were done previously that were kind of added on that weren't in a capital plan certainly have impacted
Yeah.
Our ability this year, because we have to fund those, right? We don't have a choice.
So Jeff, I think that what you just said, you should have in the back of your mind that is one of the criteria as far as what you think it's going to do. But it's really the finance team in the town that will decide where it's going to be funded from. So I don't think you should spend a whole lot of time worried about whether it's ambulance fund or general fund or whatever. I think our main job is to determine that we need it and when we need it.
Right. No, I agree.
All right, so is there a desire for me to make two motions, one around supporting a grant match and one supporting just an overall purchase if the grant is unsuccessful?
I think I'd be in favor of the first one for sure.
All right, so let me start with the easy one, I think. I'll move that the capital planning committee support a grant match of the required match for a $400,000 grant from FEMA for the purchase of a tanker truck for FY22. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further conversation?
Yes, if we put that on there, we've got it on there, then we end up getting, we don't get the grant. I don't understand what you're going to do with that. Why wouldn't you just let the reserve fund approve it if we need to do a match? Because that gets closed out. Why are we trying to end up with something that is going to stick?
We could make them ask the motion to be added to the general fund or to the chief's budget or something.
Well, that would work. It just needs to be closed out.
I personally don't think you need a motion for a grant match because I feel like everyone will rally around that. So I'm happy to withdraw it.
I do too. So Andrew, I just don't see why we wouldn't just use reserve fund. It'd be unexpected. It'd be a glorious thing to be able to approve.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm withdrawing my motion. I'm going to make a motion and listen carefully. I'm going to move that we add the fire tanker to the FY22 budget for authorization with careful consideration of the actual purchase date. Is there a second?
Second.
Let me explain. The reason I'm saying that is I think if we can get the authorization at town meeting, I think we can then have an educated discussion of whether we should wait a second grant cycle or not. We're not going to, it doesn't budget it. All it does is gives Brian the authorization to bond it. And then it allows for continued discussions, whether it be the 5-letter word or regionalization or something no one's thought of yet. But all it does is gets it on the books in case we don't have another town meeting for 365 days to figure out a best path, as opposed to everything else that kind of, everyone goes running on July 1st to make their purchases, so to say, or start their capital projects, et cetera. So, and the reason I'm saying that is I heard a lot of discussion on FY22, FY23, right? So if all of a sudden we find that our revenues have increased for some unknown source, the authorization's there. I think I'm not hearing anyone opposed to the concept. I'm hearing a lot of struggles with balancing against everything else. So that's my rationale. Welcome any feedback or discussion before I do a roll call vote.
I think that's brilliant.
Okay.
I think my only concern is it doesn't specify that it's just works, there's nothing to stop from doing it in FY22.
No, it doesn't, but it still is putting flexibility into it. So we're not forcing it.
So you have a member of the Board of Selectmen sitting on this committee that's going to make a vote. You just got elected to a 3-year term, right, Lisa? So you'll be around for those discussions. You have the town administrator, you have the finance director, and we have a chief that at least I trust. I'm sure all of you would hopefully agree with that statement too, that they're going to do the right thing and realize we're trying to advance the ball in a responsible way.
And I think it buys us the time that Kathy was talking about too, over the course of the next 6 months or year to think outside the box and maybe find another option, maybe find, who knows, another grant or something. I just think it gives us flexibility.
Why not authorize it for, a certain date, FY 23.
Because maybe we want to do it earlier. So I like this. I think this is great because, I mean, what Lisa said really struck home. So I think this is a really flexible way to do this.
Okay, roll call. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Hinterneeder. Did I get it right, first of all?
I say Hinternetter.
Hinternetter, got it.
If anybody is listening, like the fire chief, so I'm going to take the opportunity to abstain from this because I just don't know enough. So I abstain.
Totally respect that.
And I believe I'm probably on board with it, but I'm going to abstain.
Totally fine. Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
No.
and Malinowski is aye. So that is 5-1-1. Got that right? Okay. The next one is procedural, but I thought it's a good test of our new capital policy. So 5D, the chief believes he's going to be able to fund the IV pumps and SCBA cylinders, which were on our capital plan for FY22 through Harvard funds, through funds that are already in the door. But based on our policy, we technically still need to approve the concept. Now, I think it's all procedural and vote because technically we have no control over Harvard funds. That's Mark and the two chiefs. But I do think, at least I'm in favor of supporting the purchase. I've never heard any abstention to these sort of discussions, and do think it hopefully will set the tone for other special purpose vehicles that, even though it's a capital item, that it was vetted and we did support it. So I'm going to move that we support the expenditure for IV pumps and the SCBA cylinders as capital items to be sourced through the Harvard Fund. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
So Jason, are you saying that you support them only if paid for by the Harvard funds? That's what this motion is trying to say? Because we'd already vetted these.
Yeah. So it's procedural in nature, right? It's being repurposed from either ambulance fund, general fund, or to Harvard Fund. But it's still, everything was back on the table for FY22. So I just think it's, unless someone has a strong objection, I just think it's something we should support, because then when recreation or some other fund are looking to do something, it kind of sets the tone for what we're looking to do in terms of vetting. We've vetted and discussed these at length.
But are you still saying that you support them only if the chiefs agree to use their Harvard and Middlesex Bank funds?
Well, I didn't say Middlesex.
Okay, Harvard.
I would, these are kind of no-brainers to me, if you ask me. It has nothing to do with being in fire service. It's IV pumps that are required by the Massachusetts Office of Emergency Medical Services, and SCBA cylinders that have reached their useful life, which is the air that the firefighter has on their back. And if those bottles can't be tested, then what are we doing? So I support them either way, but I'm supporting specifically that we're moving them out of the FY22 capital plan from general fund or ambulance fund to the Harvard Fund. If for some reason the Harvard Fund dried up and went somewhere else, then we'd have to talk about it again. But
I just don't think we should be voting on the source. We can recommend it. We can have in our mind this is going to happen, but I just don't know. We can't tie the town to this. We don't have the authority to do this. So
hang on.
So
let me withdraw it. And what I'll say is we continue to support so I'm going to move that we continue to support the purchase of the IV pumps and SCBA cylinders. However, we understand that those will not be general fund or ambulance fund expenditures for the coming year. Is there a second to that?
Well, you've got them in the ambulance fund now, so they've been taken out. When I'm looking at, they're in the IV.
Yes,
are in.
because
That's
we haven't
out?
voted.
Okay, so that's out.
It would be if we vote yes. So I need a second to my motion.
Second. I seconded it.
All right, so I heard a second. Is there discussion?
I think I'm just like Kathy trying to wrap my head around this. So if we approve this, I mean, we don't need to approve anything. They could go right now and buy them today, right? and then they would just fall off the capital plan?
Correct.
So is that what we're doing? We're taking them off the capital plan and then she's just gonna take care of them? Support them, but we're falling off the capital.
But they should be on the capital plan because it's still a capital expenditure. It's just there's been a change in funding mechanism and we should applaud them for the change in funding mechanism is all I'm trying to do here.
No, I get it. I'm just, from the spreadsheet wise, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
So we'll keep them on the spreadsheet, but we'll change it in theory from general fund to other or something.
Yes.
Okay. I'm good. Sorry.
All right. Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Nay.
Hark,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Abstain.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. So that was a 5-1-1. Did I get that right? Okay. This next one's an FYI. The school, when they were in front of advisory, raised capital projects that we don't have on our capital plan for FY22. At the local level, so the K through 8, I think we're fine because they are planning to pave 1 or 2 parking lots. I believe it's Trotter and Finn, but they're planning to use their funding that they have from rent receipts. So I'm not asking anyone agrees with the use of that fund, but they do not plan to come to town meeting through a warrant article through the Southborough schools for a capital item. So if you were to look at their capital plan, they actually have an item in there, but it's not necessarily here. So we do need to figure out with the schools a better cadence moving forward, but I don't know that right now is the time to do that in terms of trying to match up how they fund their capital through essentially a revolving account. It goes to the funding concept we just talked through. So are there any questions on that? I view that as an FYI, but I'm happy to take questions before going to the regional. All right. There's apparently an anticipated capital expense for the region for telephone system at the Algonquin school. Southborough would not bear the 100% of that expense. My understanding is it's approximately 30,000 for Southborough's share. I'm not asking you to take an opinion, voice one at this point. I'm just putting it out there that we may have to vet that one if they come forward with anything. I do have a message out to the superintendent. There is a Northborough person that actually chairs that committee this year. So it's just trying to figure out, are they really going to advance that or not? Because what I don't want to end up in a situation is Northborough's bringing something forward and Southborough isn't. So, you know, it's fine if Southborough doesn't approve of it and Northborough does, that's up to town meeting. But I think we need to at least be in concert of bringing something forward and making a recommendation. We could all say it's a bad idea or a good idea. That's, you know, just more of an FYI, I think, at this point.
I would say, Jason, the only thing on that is for 75,000 and a $20 million budget, can't they just add it to the operating?
I think they're trying to get away from that, but
I mean, I understand for big stuff, but
yeah. So there's nothing we're going to vote on so then it doesn't go to the warrant, right? But I'm just making everyone aware that may come at some point. I just don't know when. That came up, what is that, 10 days ago now, Kathy?
It was at the advisory meeting on January 28th.
Okay. So, all right. So now we've been in 5F. We kind of, when we were talking to each of the department heads, but now we're kind of back. So I think what I'm looking to do here is I need to understand from the committee if there's any things that they want to remove. Because, right, if I hear the same thing from 5, 6, 7 members, then, you know, we should talk about it and make some formal votes. Likewise, if there's anything in here that's untouchable, then we should just, you know, continue to cement the support behind that. Currently, if you're looking in the FY22 summary of capital, we're expecting about if we continue with exactly as planned for FY22, we're expecting a 1,496,200 to be the amount of capital that's expended. That is an increase, obviously, year over year. Part of that's just reclassification from budget articles, right, Brian, to actual true capital. I think you're carrying as one number now, but a lot of it is obviously the hook lift truck and some of these other items that we talked about a lot this year of, they were pushed off from last year to this year. So I don't have a particular format I'm wed to. I'm inclined to just go around and just see first if there's any that people have changed their mind next. We were unanimous on everything. There's absolutely, everyone has a right to change their vote here because we are looking still at approximately an 8% increase. There is a 7 in front of it now, Mark, right? And Brian?
High sevens.
Yeah, high sevens. So I think we all have to be realistic here that as much as even if everyone wanted to support all these, what is financially responsible to do this year? Obviously, the operations are going to have to do their own thing. That's not up to this committee, but having capital of almost 1.5 million, even after some of these edits we've heard tonight of different funding sources, et cetera, does put a pinch on things. And key rule of thumb is for every 400,000, you reduce the tax rate about 1%. So that's just, barometer, right? This is driving, right? If you just removed all capital, right? You're still only reducing the tax rate down to approximately, high 3s, right? So even if I'm certainly not advocating removing all the capital, but, this isn't the end all be all, right? There's many other factors that aren't, subject to the group here that need to be considered. So I'm just looking for kind of quick hits if we think that there are items that we want to remove, if there are items we need to put our steadfast support behind. So I'm going to go with the kind of items to remove first. Steve, technically you're up first, but I'm going to pass on you to go to the end unless you have a strong objection to that. I think I heard you say no objection, but
Yeah, I don't object. Yeah, I don't. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Joe, are there any items that you wish to see removed at this point?
Apart from the ones that were discussed, they were already discussed by people at the last meeting.
So I need you to list them just so we're all on the same page.
Well, people talked about the sidewalks. I agree. I think most of the equipment just, everybody always talks about kicking the can down the road. The cans have been kicked down the road. And with a lot of this stuff, I feel like we're just talking about kicking stuff more down the road. And I know we don't want to pay for it, but at the same time, we'll be talking next year about how we kicked whatever this year down to the next year. And it all just runs downhill. Like I said, I don't think that we're going to, the only way I see getting out of this in any way that with any skin in the, left is to change the way in which we're doing our buying, not necessarily how much we're going to cut.
Okay. So your point is sidewalk maintenance is the only item that you may change your vote on at this point.
Oh, I'm not sure I was in on it then. Yeah, I would take sidewalk out probably. I mean, at this point, because the sidewalks should be done when you're doing the streets anyway. So having a separate sidewalk fund at this point, I believe Karen already said that she tends to do sidewalks when she does the road if the sidewalk needs to be repaired, if they're there. So unless you're doing brand new road, even in the next year, that, how much the sidewalk fund would actually be used would be used for maintenance only, not even for new. So who knows how much she would actually need. And I think Andrew did a good job of selling that there's still some money left over and maybe some money that could be repurposed. So that's sort of an easy one to do. The chief's vehicle, I would say, is on the block for a year. Just it's not a need, it's a want. Most of the rest of the stuff with the DPW, it seems like we have to have. So that stuff wears out just as fast as anything. That's about it. That's about all I have.
So Joe, I've highlighted sidewalk maintenance and chief's vehicle at this point for you. Andrew?
I think I'm with Joe, except I would add probably the server maybe.
Let me give you, actually, that's a good one. Let me just give an update on that.
Yeah.
So MTC talked about it at their last meeting. We obviously still don't have a town IT director. They have worked with the prior IT director to obtain certain information that will allow them to vet whether A, this is the right plan, and B, whether this is the right number, particularly in response to Mr. Butler's email that we all received as well. So I think it's incredibly appropriate to flag, but they are going to come back with something. I don't know if it's 0 or some number between 0 and 90. I hope it's not more than 90, but I do know that their initial reaction was there needs to be changes. I just don't know what the changes are. So I flagged that one, but I also don't think we should vote on that until we hear back from them. Mark, my understanding is they got access to whatever they need today. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's my understanding, texting back and forth with Tom. He had a Zoom late today with Matt Probst. So, and he's of the opinion Matt got the information he needed. So now I think it's a matter of Matt just turning it around.
And I guess they have a public meeting posted for tomorrow, so I'm hoping they discuss it there. So Andrew, you had sidewalks, server, and chief vehicle, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards maybe the chief vehicle is like a swap out for the tanker. Like, if we do the tanker this year, then maybe chief's vehicles next year, or if we don't do the tanker this year, we do the chief's vehicle this year. That kind of makes sense. But I don't think we need to straight up remove it.
Okay. Anything else from you?
That's it.
Lisa?
Sidewalks, and Andrew, can I ask you a question? Do you have the spreadsheet of the police vehicles?
Yep.
On the chief's vehicle, how many miles does he currently have on it?
Well, chief's is brand new. You mean the one that he's going to give to the detective?
Yes, sorry.
Hold on one second.
So if we didn't do this vehicle, he'd still be in the vehicle that's going to the detective. If I'm not mistaken, that one is 99,000?
99,000. Yep.
Okay. So
Now that the fire one could go and replace some of the other, like the backup detail only ones or something like that. Or it could go to Mr.
I did
Parent.
ask the chief about that. He has no interest in that vehicle. Because of what he would have to do to retrofit it.
Okay, the fire chief to the police, you mean?
Yeah, so Chief Paulus, to be clear.
Yeah.
If we offered him the fire prevention car, he did not have any interest in that.
Okay. So it'd probably be more of a Mr. Parent vehicle.
So I'm on the fence on the chief vehicle only because at 99,000 miles in another year, you're probably going to add, I don't know, 25, 30,000 more miles on it. And where it's the vehicle that if something happens, the chief needs to get back to Southborough quickly. I just want to make sure that he's in a vehicle.
No, but the chief's got a brand new car.
Okay, I
So
misunderstanding.
you're confusing fire and police?
When you say chief, whoever's talking, say.
Oh, I am,
chief,
sorry,
please.
sorry. Okay, that's me, never mind. Sorry, I was looking at my sheet and I thought it said police. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
So are you for or against fire chief vehicle? Or on the fence, it's fine.
on the fence.
Okay.
On the fence, and definitely server, definitely sidewalk, on the fence.
And
and chief.
the chief is the
Sorry.
expedition, right, Jason?
Yes.
Okay.
Which chief? Say which chief, please.
Fire.
I know,
Fire
sorry.
chief, car 20, Ford Expedition, 2017.
Sorry, Kathy, I didn't mean to confuse everything. I had it
It's
written
not,
down
it
the
says
wrong
you're saying
way.
chief and we got two chiefs.
Yeah. All right, I'm good, Jason, thank you.
Kathy?
Okay, so Jason, I start off with 1,506,200. So I need to take out the SCBA cylinders. That gets me down to 1,496,200. What's your number?
That's
That was
it.
it.
Okay,
Well, and the police cruisers are lower now, right? 101 or something, right?
I've got that. So I've got them at 50,500 each, but that's probably not right, right? It sounds like one's going to be different.
One's more, one's less.
Do you
One's
know the
45,
numbers?
one's 50. One's 55, one's 45, then you gotta outfit them.
Okay,
So-
I won't fix that yet. Okay, so here I go. I'm surprised you guys didn't say this. Karen Galligan has said she doesn't need the 3 plows. They have repaired 3 plows this year, so take the 3 plows out. And that's not deferring. Those are out. She says next year she's got 3 more plows on there, but they're different plows. So she said they have fixed, repaired, we have 3 plows. She said they don't need the trailer. So take the trailer out. That's 12,000. Take the sidewalk fund out. I totally agree. Take the I said servers, I put MTC restructuring. So I don't know. I agree. That's a question mark right now as far as what we do there. Then I want to so those are deletes. Then I want to defer the townhouse rehab for the bathrooms. I want to defer, and I know we hate that word, but I'm using it, 1 police car. And I want to defer the fire chief vehicle. And the reason I did this, I did what I thought we were supposed to do, which is rank these from most needed to least needed. So that's what I did. So that group is in my least needed. And I also stopped where I thought we needed to end up town-wise to end up with what we've got to do to get this tax rate down. The problem
What
with
does
it-
that get you to?
So
If everyone-
yeah, well, leaving the 2 police cars at exactly half, so that number's a little bit off. So I left one in there. That's 943,700 as far as what would be funded by the general fund.
And you did what for an amount on servers?
I put it, so that's going to add to it, Jason. So I've got the question mark, but I still got it below because I've heard enough from Matt and his team to know that they agree in principle with John Butler. I also know that some of us think that maybe you can't put everything on the cloud. So that's a question mark. So that may adjust that number up. I've got it just below. I'm just calling it waiting for MTC restructuring. So I've got a question mark by that one.
Kathy, can you just go through that one more time, just to make
Yeah.
sure that I got it correct?
But let me tell you how I got to the 943, Lisa, that may help. So I started it with road maintenance, facilities maintenance, and I did call John Parent to make sure he was going to use all of his money for fiscal year 21. He thinks he is, so we can't lower the facilities maintenance. Hook lift truck, 165. She said she wanted that the most. Library, I put it back in after tonight, 115. I had it out. Chipper, 30,000. Diesel truck, 70. 1 police car at 50,500. Fire turnout gear at 40. The defibrillators at 18.2, and the thermal cameras at 30. That all totals 943,700. So that's what I've left in for sure.
All right. Anything else, Kathy?
Nope.
Jeff?
I was going to add a couple of things that Kathy had that Karen specifically called out on here. Again, the only thing I'm on the fence with is the library, with all due respect to everything about the library. I'm on the fence about the 115. And I understand the $900,000 number, but that would be assuming absolutely no bonding, right?
Correct.
So I think we need to look at that lever as well. And Brian, you could package some of this stuff, even though they are discrete type of items. Is that correct?
Good, but we probably won't, I'll be honest.
So Brian, explain why you're against this. Make sure everybody understands this. So it totals, Jeff, $518,000 we're talking about as far as the miscellaneous stuff. You can't bond the facilities maintenance article or the road maintenance article.
Right, of course.
Right. And it's just not, so it costs a certain amount to bond too. And it's not worth it for items like 200-300, it gets a little bit of a gray area around the 200,000 or 300,000 range. But, I'm just, it's a policy I'm just not going to cross. I mean, I'll be honest, it's not worth it. And towns that do it get into trouble, bonding these minor items. So, we could package the whole capital under a bond, except for the road maintenance and capital fund, but that would be foolish. So I don't want to give you false hope. That's probably not going to happen.
And why do you think it's foolish, Brian?
Well, we could bond computers. We could bond cruisers, but we're just not going to do it. The town's never bonded low cost items like that.
What's your threshold?
Usually around three.
And there's a difference in you being, because we're saying, can you not put it all in one package and do one bond? So you have, one fixed cost to do that? Are you saying, no, I can't do that, I'd have to do it separately?
No. You could, as long as it's allowed by law, you could package it and put it together.
Because if you're
Yeah,
saying
and-
300 is your number, we're saying 500 here.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna do it because they're all separate projects.
And you're saying they've got different lives.
Yeah, they've got different lives and it's just not fiscally prudent in my opinion. Yeah, you can stretch.
Is it fair
Main
to,
Street if you want to.
is it fair to say doing something like that could jeopardize the bond rating?
Well, it's a piece of it.
In
I wouldn't go that-
isolation, it wouldn't, but combined with other factors,
That's right.
could.
That's right. Your amortization payoff and the type of projects that you do are all part of that too.
I mean, he's right. We're probably talking a 3-year amortization on some of the stuff, maybe 5 on some of it. Library carpet would be 30 years, as we heard. But it'd be all, I mean, you'd have different lives here, so I don't know how you would do it in one big package.
Even if you did a 3-year note at 2%, I mean, the rates are crazy low, historically low, and we've had a policy in the past based on much higher run rates or interest rates, I should say.
I think the issue is the administrative cost of what it costs for you to actually bond. It doesn't make the interest rate worth it. I think that's where you get into more equipment leasing would be a better deal. Where it
Right.
doesn't
If it costs
cost you.
50,000 to bond this, then, that's basically an effective, another 3% interest rate for
10%.
over 3 years.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Anything
kind of
else?
like the idea of spreading an asset expense over the life of it so the different taxpayers, if they're getting use of the asset, they're paying for it. But that's a whole nother philosophical change on how we're doing things. But I don't think we get into that tonight.
The Butler White Paper coming through.
Steve, I don't want to leave you out there. Before I go, anything that's popped out listening to any of this that you want to offer anything on?
I mean, I like the idea of the, holding out the chief's vehicle, fire chief's vehicle. If you're going to be putting in a $400,000, could be necessary, might not be necessary this year type of approach that, the fire chief can figure that out and hold out for another year for his vehicle. So I don't know enough about the other stuff to say what should else come out.
Jason, one item to keep in mind that we don't have on here is I'm not sure that CPC has voted to fund 100% of the townhouse. They voted to put it on the warrant, but I don't think they've decided exactly how much of it. So I'm not sure if some of that might come back to general fund.
I'm not doing that until someone tells me I have to.
Really?
They voted unanimously to put it on the warrant. So they're gonna have to make up their mind pretty soon on what their position is, obviously.
That would be unusual. They would think that they were going to split it with the town without telling the town early.
They haven't voted.
It's a valid point, Andrew, but I'm not gonna go there unless.
No, I'm
someone
just
really-
saying, maybe highlight it just to make sure we don't, forget about it.
Well, then it becomes a discussion of whether you want to fund the other part this year or whether you hold off. Like you get the authorization, but you wait, and figure it out.
Yeah.
Mark and Brian, before I offer my comments, anything, when you liaise with these department heads a lot, anything that you feel any of the committee members are off base on, anything we should be considering that we haven't thrown out there, this is your chance. I know it's dangerous given you have to work with everyone every day, but you are going to have to make some recommendations to various boards pretty soon. So give you a dry run.
Who wants to go first? Me? I'll go first. No, I think most of them made sense. I do hesitate on the townhouse bathrooms. I think they do, it is a value to that. So partly because I work there, but I do think just deferring that is kind of another pushing that down the road. So I'd be careful of that, but everything else was kind of made sense to me. My feeling.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Brian. I think the easy one out of all the ones that were mentioned is obviously the sidewalks. I agree with, I believe it was Joe's point. If you're redoing a road, if you're redoing something, you're going to redo everything else along with it. Usually takes the sidewalks into account. So I think that's the easy one. Some of the other ones, they're really political decisions. We we've been kicking some of these items down the road. I think Jason has articulated that's, you know, we've got things set up for every year. So it's not like deferring a bunch of stuff this year makes next year easier. It just means we're likely going to be deferring something else next year. So, yeah, that's, it's, I don't think there's any easy answers, you know, beyond sidewalks.
All right. I agree. Sidewalks the easiest one, but I'm actually struggling with that one. Not because I think we should spend 200,000 on it, but if we look at the survey results we got and other boards and committees have gotten, this is like the #1 item in town that people are actually asking for. So while I do not plan to vote in favor of it, right? So I'm kind of with most of the rest of you. I would like to see someone, and Andrew, I'm kind of looking at you unless you object, given all the work you're doing with Karen. Can we find a way to do like a one-time sidewalk project in this town? And I'm not saying it's gonna be ready for May or June, but like actually sit with Karen and figure out, I'm not talking about new sidewalks yet. Just focus on the infrastructure we have to get those to, I'll call it a safe, usable condition for what's exists, right? If we did a one-time article, Brian agrees to bond it because it'll be something greater than 200,000, right? Like, and we can, right? Like, but do it all at once. Like have one paving company go in, you know, across town and fix all that. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but I know it's something we haven't looked at. So I guess to vote no on that, I would want to know that we have a plan forward and maybe we do have a fall town meeting and that's something that could be authorized then. I mean, obviously if you're ready for the spring, great, but I'm not optimistic. So I guess
Yeah, I mean,
thoughts on that, and are you open to that?
yeah, I can work on it with Karen. I think, you know, talking with her, I think what we really need is that kind of shared streets sidewalk survey plan, right? Okay, these are the top 10. Karen's kind of worked on that. That's part of her shared streets, complete streets. And then putting a dollar amount to it and saying, okay, we're going to do, you know, that we're going to do a sidewalk and road maintenance stabilization fund, or we're going to do a fund and we're going to fund it with millions of dollars. And we're going to, at one time, approve a large purchase to just do, you know, all these streets, fix all these. I mean, the road maintenance fund that we have today can fix the ones in town. So if there's any bad enough, Karen can go out and do that now with the money she already has. So I think it's just more, I think to your point, people want more sidewalks. I mean, yes, they want to fix the ones that maybe have some issues. But I think more of it is we need more sidewalks, more walking trails, more biking in general. And I wouldn't want to just say fix the new ones, because people are saying, well, what about, you know, I'd rather have a broken down one inside, you know, in front of my house than nothing at all. You know, what about my house kind of thing?
And the only reason I said repair was because I felt like whatever's going on with complete streets, right? That's part of any plan now for any road construction, right? And
yeah,
any project she has kind of on the list.
Yeah. But she can use her current road fund when she does the road to do the sidewalks as well.
Okay,
Andrew,
so
when you do that, would you also go back and refresh the spreadsheet that advisory did a couple years ago on how we came up with the 325, and just make sure that it's still that nothing's changed with that she really does have room to do what you just said?
Sure. If you can re-forward that to me if you have it.
I will. And remember too, that the project that that she applied for, they got approved, that's going to change the intersection of St. Mark's Road and 85 is going to require Chapter 90 money too. So keep that in mind when you look at it.
This is probably something that we should also work with Public Works Planning Board, I would assume as well.
unless anyone has any objection to that, I am full in favor of Andrew going off and working through this. Okay, so how does the committee feel about voting on removing that tonight? I heard pretty much everyone mention it, so I'm just trying to help Brian as he messages to all of his stakeholders, kind of know what's definitely been removed versus still under work. So I'm seeing a lot of head nods yes, so I'm gonna move that we remove the sidewalk maintenance for FY22.
Before you do that, I mean, Kathy brought up some other items that should be removed as well.
I want to do it one by one. So, because I think I'm not sure I heard as unanimous consent around. That way, it's I have differing votes. I gotta have
I
different.
think you should do, I agree, do it one at a time.
All right, so I need a second to that.
Second.
Second.
All right, so seconded by Andrew. Any further discussion? All right, roll call. Lisa,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Hinterneeder,
Abstain.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. So that's 601. The other items I heard were server and, sorry, I'm going to start at the top of this list. Equipment trailer. I heard Karen say that, but I also, Karen was always the first one to give up on capital items. What we didn't have a chance to ask her, is there a safety issue with the current trailer? I'd love to remove it, but I didn't hear whether, like, is there a safety issue or not? Like, I heard about rebuilding something. I'm all for rebuilding as long as it's a safe and usable and functional thing, but did anyone hear that or did I miss it? Like, I didn't know why she was moving other than, like, she doesn't need it, or Kathy, you're the one that had the conversation with her, right?
She really threw that away so quick, Jason. I just said, Karen, can you rank your stuff as far as order of importance? And then she, without any prompting, any pushing, anything, absolutely threw out the 3 plows and the trash, because I don't, the plows, we took care of them this year. We refurbished them. We're all set with those. And then she said, we don't need the trailer. She didn't say to me what she said to us tonight, as far as they were going to basically create a trailer with something they've got. But she said, we don't need the trailer.
So I'm going to move those two together unless anyone has any objection to that they have a split vote on those. So I'm going to move that we remove the equipment trailer and the 3 large truck plows per the recommendation of the DPW director. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jeff. Any further conversation? All right. Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Hinterneeder. I think you said abstain, but I missed.
No, I said aye.
Aye. Okay. Got it. Glad I asked. Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski is aye. Next one I have on the list, so that was unanimous, 7-0. Next one I have on the list was townhouse bathroom and interior renovations. I only heard this from 1 or 2 of you. I didn't offer an opinion, so I'm going to offer it now. I strongly believe that I can probably ask John Parent to refine this number or figure out whether this is still the right number. And the reason I say that, in asking him the question about the hybrid police car and whether we can get that in the green communities, he was very quick to offer how much savings he has on the senior center bathroom that he did, because he used labor that we already have on staff. And my understanding, Mark, is the quality, I haven't seen it, I don't know if you have, is phenomenal. And he was incredibly proud of the work, right? Which obviously goes to, I know he every time I talk to him, he talks about the quality of his team. So I guess I struggle with not doing this one now when that building isn't full and they can just knock it out, right? And potentially, save us some money. So I wouldn't remove this one, because I think that the price can be refined, but there's some of you may say, I don't care if it's $5,000 versus 80. I'm not ready to do that this year. So I guess that's what I'm just trying to figure out. Is it the cost? Is it want versus need? Any of you other than Brian, seen them recently? Like those sorts of things. I'm just trying to get a temperature on whether we're ready on this one or not, because it wasn't as unanimous.
Jason, I'll just say you make a good point. I spoke to John, I don't know if Mark has, and it was only recently, it was in the past day or two. And he was gonna look into the jail, doing some work on that and, with his own team. And he did mention the bathrooms and the price coming down a little bit. So I think you might be right, that there might be a new value to that. So I think that's just helpful that brought
He
that up.
saved, Brian, he saved more than half at the senior center.
Yeah, the senior center came out great. I did see them. I believe Mr. Purple did too. And
Yes.
I can only say they came out excellent.
Yeah, no, John's employees do a great job. We've got some real skill in some of the staff now, and we're putting them to use. So essentially, I think we're paying more for, or we're paying simply for the materials, and we're able to, handle installation improvements in-house, which is saving us money.
So I might get in trouble for this, but maybe I've only been in, how many bathrooms are there at the townhouse?
There's one women's, and there's one men's, and then there's one unisex single stall upstairs.
Okay, so we're not talking about increasing the number, we're just talking about rehabbing those three?
Yes. I don't know if they do. I don't think they're going to do anything with the one upstairs, Kathy.
Well, maybe that's the one I've been in, because the one I've been in, it seems like a nice bathroom. So that's why I was questioning this. So
It's gotta be the one you were in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I just haven't been in the other two. But as far as Jason's point, that I like the idea of doing things when the buildings are closed. I think it's a great idea. But, if you can't start on this until July, will the building still be that closed at that point? Who knows, right? It could be, but it may not be. So I'm not going to necessarily put a whole lot of stake into that because I don't know. But so I guess I just don't know what the other two look like. I know what the one looks like that I've been in, and it's in good shape.
I know it's an awkward place to take a picture, but like at least if someone could get like pictures of like the floor tile or
Don't
something
get in
like.
trouble, Jason.
But like I'm just thinking like if there's a way to get like a floor tile or something.
Yeah. Yep.
The ladies' room, Kathy, in the townhouse is very dated downstairs. It's very dated. It's reminiscent of, I hate to say this, but I say this with much kindness, like a Walmart, Kmart bathroom. Yeah, it's very old. It certainly could do with some rehab, no question. No
Maybe
question.
maybe Caldor.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I say that with much kindness, but it's what you would expect, something that was in an older store it's
So
very
if
dated.
if the ladies' room is Caldor's, then I think the men's room is Woolworths.
I haven't been in the men's room, so I can't speak to that one, but I would be really interested, Jason, to see what John would say as a cost, and I
Okay.
So is it the unisex one that's in good shape?
Yeah.
Okay, so that must be the one I've been in.
All right. So everyone good with holding a decision on that one till the next meeting?
Yeah.
Chief vehicle. I heard more no's than yeses.
Fire
The
chief
on-
vehicle.
Fire chief, sorry. Yes, I'm not following instructions. Fire chief, car 20. The only thing that I would offer is an opportunity for Chief Achilles to come back. If that's the way it's trending. And the only reason I say that is, remember, he has a pickup truck next year that was supposed to go this year too, and he had deferred that because of the decision to defer this one. So he had told us that if we deferred the chief's vehicle, he was going to pull the pickup truck back up. Well, am I remembering this one correctly? I hear Brian's nodding his head yes. So
Yeah, I recall that.
so
I do.
Okay, so
I
this
don't know
is where
I don't know what
everybody-
to do about that. Like
How many miles are on this vehicle that he would give up?
over 70,000. I can get the precise number tomorrow. It was Chief Morrow's. It was Chief Morrow's car. It was Chief Morrow's take-home car until Chief Achilles became chief. And then Chief Achilles moved from the 70,000-ish mile car to the 20,000-ish mile car.
Yeah, I think it's
You see, you guys are still confusing me. Okay, what car? We're trying to buy a new car for Chief Achilles, and he's giving up what car?
He'd be giving up a 2017 Ford Expedition, which would go to the fire prevention officer and on-duty shift commanders, et cetera. So you'd have 2 command vehicles, right? That was the whole argument he had made. Then you would take the existing Ford Explorer, which is the one you noted you saw in the parking lot at the last meeting with all the labeling. That's the fire prevention's car. That's the one that people have talked about, the concept of whether that goes to facilities. So I'm happy to entertain a motion now, but I want to, out of respect for the chief, want to let him come back and articulate the need, respond to the request to swap that for the tanker, because I heard at least one person, if not more, say that, and also clarify that pickup truck statement, because that sticks in my mind more than anything else.
That's reasonable.
And I think,
Okay.
Jason, one other thing, if you could ask him, or one he could do when he's here, is I think when he was talking about the deputy chief, that expedition, the old expedition would go to the deputy chief, right? And he didn't need another vehicle, just to make sure that.
Yeah, I don't think the deputy is on the docket.
No, I just didn't want there, if we got a deputy chief in a year or two or something like that, that we need another vehicle, then we might as well keep the Explorer, if you know what I mean?
Yes, I see what you're saying. I think that's a great question to pose next week. I'll make sure he's.
Yeah.
Not next week, 2 weeks. I'll invite him and see if he wants to come in or at least submit a response to that question. All right. Server and infrastructure, I think there was pretty good consent around waiting for MTC to come back to us. So that will hopefully be. And then that brings us to police cruisers. So I heard a few people suggest 1, but I don't know there was more than 2. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Seem to be the minority.
What I would like to see, and Andrew, don't get too excited, is I would like to see a 5 or 10-year plan for cruisers. We know the chief buys 2, right? 2 this year, then it'll be 1 next year, 2 the next year, 1 the next year, right? And every so often, right, every 7th year, he gets his chief's vehicle, which is actually much less. But like, actually build out a leasing schedule. Like, because I think this is the one item I have found, based on what I've looked at, that people more consistently lease in the municipal sector than, right? And you can throw in the fire chief vehicle too, if that's, something, but come back and say, like, because that may sway how we think about this if we look at the 5 to 10 year cost of the chief's replacement program. But that was the only thing I could offer to maybe bridge some of the gap. But I do agree that it seemed like most were in favor of 2. But I was just, again, in the spirit of trying to find not only common ground, but a financially responsible way. I don't hear anyone saying he doesn't need 2. I hear people saying they're just trying to prioritize. Please.
He either needs 2 or 1 every year. That's just a fact, and this may be a 2-year. But I'd also say let's defer officially voting on this for another reason, which is we will have more information on the conversations that are ongoing with the schools as far as pilot money in a couple of weeks. We will have, I think, some answers probably.
Yeah. The only other question is maybe you don't defer it for a year. I mean, you could defer it to be, January 1st purchase, right? Or something like that. I don't know.
What good is that to you? Well, money-wise, it doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So Jason, why did you allude to a fall town meeting a minute ago?
I don't know of one. I mean, but that was, I think, the intent, like prior to this whole COVID thing we're all dealing with, right? So I got to believe there's something that's going to percolate in this town between now, like given everything that's done, but I don't know, right? Like we can't guarantee it, but the whole intent of when we were formed was that capital items would go in the fall timeframe.
I have a question. Is there any appetite for the Board of Selectmen to institute some sort of change in the way that they were doing business by annual meeting? Because this does seem to be a problem, and it could hit the town at any time again. And whether there should be some sort of voting amendment that they can either go around annual meeting or that annual meeting can happen at a closed vote, like we do elections, so that we don't have to have these annual meeting problems and stretch it out for a week where people vote on whatever comes in.
Well, annual meetings are pretty much set by state law, and we've got a town bylaw that says we've got to have ours the last Saturday in March. And that was changed a few years ago, where it used to be in April, because a lot of the younger folks wanted to move it up so it didn't interfere with their kids' sports schedules. So we can always try to change the date of town meeting again. I would love to see it pushed back. It makes it hard to do. But as far as doing what you just proposed, Joe, that's pretty much, I think, outside both state law and our town bylaw.
I think Joe's maybe talking maybe a representative town meeting, but that's the only thing I could think of that would kind of solve for that.
Yeah, so we're not.
But not me anyway.
I'm open to any options.
Okay, so Brian, I know Andrew has obviously been pretty vocal about the leasing concept. Is there anything you or Mark or anyone on your team could add to be involved in that conversation? I just think this is the example. We should either put this argument to bed or put it into action one way or another.
No, I'm supportive of the idea to look into it. So.
Okay, so let me ask those that are in favor of one cruiser. If we come back with leasing as an option, does that change your opinion on one versus two, if it's more financially responsible, not only short term, but longer term? Or is it the concept of two versus one? I don't remember who was opposed to.
I'm the one, I was one. Who else wanted maybe one? Anybody else besides me?
I was kind of leaning there, but I like the idea of, them getting created with the 5,000, maybe with the green and one car versus one SUV, kind of starting to work on me.
Andrew, leasing could solve your January 1st question as well, right?
Yeah, and I think, to Jason's point, if you create a leasing program, you can kind of set it up where you almost don't have to go to town meeting, right? It's in your operational budget. So, once a car hits 100,000 miles, 120,000 miles, whatever it is, you just, you would basically, swap it out for something else and your payments would be the same. So you don't have to kind of wait for that. It just becomes part of your operational budget.
Well, it's got to be part of an operational budget that's been approved by town meeting.
Yeah. But I'm saying, the chief can kind of cycle his vehicles within that budget when they hit.
I definitely think we should look at this, especially if we can, one of the things we've got to probably, and we're going to talk about stabilization, we have got to learn how to flatten things out so we don't have these big peaks and valleys and certain things, which is what's causing our problem this year. We've got 3 things that are peaking this year. And so if this would kind of amortize the cost of police cars on a steady basis, I'm all for looking at this really closely.
Okay. So we have a few homework assignments for the next meeting, but then anything else not discussed tonight, can I assume continued support? Because we were unanimous on everything else that's been discussed. I can read them off just to be clear, if that would be helpful to everyone.
Is anyone else on the fence about the library?
Sorry, Jeff, you did say that, but I didn't flag it. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, and we definitely should talk about that one.
Only the time and payment, as far as I'm concerned. It does need to be done, but the timing, as it's been kicked down the road, they're like they were saying, it's all about timing.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on the library like I am on the townhouse bathroom. I think, July 1st, if we can get these things going, while people are still kind of at home and not quite ready for COVID to be over and not using these places interior wise, it's probably the best time to do it.
I was shocked when she said that carpet was bought in 1989 with all the people that have walked on it. That's 32 years old. I bet they are a little bit off on that, but no matter what, and then the fact that they can't get anybody to agree to clean it. So I came in with that absolutely moved, deferred, because we had talked to John Parent and Ryan, and they both told Jason and I separately that it was fine to defer. In fact, Ryan wanted to defer it. He was tired of the building project that's going on. He wanted a break. And then he talked to the board, and the board had a different opinion, which is what you heard tonight. But so Jeff, I came in, definitely wanted to move that one to next year. But after hearing how old that carpet was, I have trouble saying no to that one right now.
Okay.
I mean, if there was a solid spot in the next year or 24 months that you tell me it absolutely would get done, I might conceivably be moved to move it a ways out. But it's like we're talking about, we're just kicking another one down the road. And if we can't, but are we really looking at it then for what, 23? Or
Well, then there's gonna be
We
something
don't
in
know. We
20,
can't
there's gonna be
guarantee that.
something in 23 that inevitably we're gonna sit here and talk about next year that gets pushed to 24. But part of our problem this year is we actually could have funded a lot of this stuff in FY21. We just never had a fall town meeting.
We made a mistake. There's no doubt about it with what we did. We drove the tax rate down so low that now you can't. The problem is if we had a 3% last year, we wouldn't be talking about, almost 8 right now. We'd be talking, 6, maybe high 5s, but we didn't. And so we're stuck with, a really big year-over-year increase because of what we did last year.
Although this is probably a project we could break a piece off of, because there was painting and other stuff involved, and we could probably space it out maybe over a 2 or 3 year plan and do it may not be the best thing to do, but we could do it in pieces.
Well, remember the mover comment though that he said. That stood with me, Joe.
And they probably don't want to necessarily paint after they put a new carpet in, because then you got to worry about messing the carpet up. So I just say if they're going to do it, let's knock it out while the library's still not open, and get it done. And it'll go really nicely with the facade work and the new roof and all the other stuff.
All right, so I'm gonna leave that one highlighted. We can vote on it at next meeting if there's split vote, there's a split vote. But I think we heard a lot tonight. So if anyone wants to digest it, I did ask John Parent at some point. I don't think in the last week or so if that number could go down. Like if there was anything savings with that building closed, and I think he reinforced it tonight when someone asked a question, right? Is like when they asked about the 2014. So, all right. So I think we've made some decisions. Brian, we've helped your rate a little bit tonight. Probably not as much as anyone wants, but I think we're trying to make the right decisions here and balance. So is there anything else before I move the FY22 capital beyond that on the agenda? I'm going to hit each item just for the sake of the agenda, but I'm going to move past a few items given the hour of the night unless someone yells and screams at me. So very quick under item 6A, School Research Subcommittee revised NESDEC report. We received a revised NESDEC report last week. The subcommittee is meeting Friday morning to discuss it. I don't have any appetite to discuss it tonight, not because of the hour, but I would like to hear the full explanation from the superintendent and operations director and let the committee at least vet some of the comments. But here's the takeaway. The enrollment is basically going to be flat for the next 10 years, not increasing. So we need to vet the assumptions and what changed, et cetera, but it's a pretty, what I'll term in my accounting world, material change. There are some factors that need to still be discussed, but more to come on that. I will post the report to the share drive just so everyone can see it and noodle around with it. And then the subcommittee meets 7:30 a.m. on Friday. And obviously that video will be out there for anyone that wants to watch, and we'll update you after the next meeting. 6B, South Union School update. So there's potential that this will be on the agenda for next Tuesday. I know they have a very tight agenda with the Board of Selectmen to discuss the path forward. There was a refreshed memo, is my understanding, Mark, that was done to perk testing that was done back in 2004. As you recall, this committee authorized funding for full perk testing. And the Board of Selectmen had taken a vote at a prior meeting to authorize perk testing on that. So the meeting with the Board of Selectmen, I will confirm when it happens. I will post joint if they want us that date or another date, is to kind of decide what steps they're going to take between now and town meeting, because there is a placeholder warrant article. It's just a matter of what steps, if anything, they're going to take. I think they want, at least from what I've understood, and Mark or Lisa, please chime in. But my understanding is they want us to still continue to collaborate, but I'm also of the mindset that this committee has absolutely, other than Lisa, zero vote into what happens with the parcel, at least in terms of, town meeting, in terms of bringing to the floor. Obviously, town meeting will ultimately decide the fate, which all of us will have a vote in, but, the board does need to chart that path. So Lisa, Mark, anything to add on that particular piece?
I said, just one thing to clarify the process, Jason, and I think town meeting would give the selectmen the discretion to dispose of the property. And so then I think it falls to the Board of Selectmen to determine, specifically how they want to do that and if there's any conditions they want to put on it. But yeah, town meeting would have to authorize the board to dispose of the property before anything could happen.
But the board can bring an offer to town meeting.
The board could bring an offer to town meeting, I think. I don't know that they would be asking the town to approve disposition based on that offer, or whether they would be using it to try to get town meeting to understand what they could be getting if in fact they did dispose of the property.
Understood. Lisa, anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. So I will keep everyone up to date on that. Kathy, next item's you. Discussion of solar for rooftops of town-owned buildings.
Okay, so I can do this pretty quick. So I actually called, so I just got a lot of experience in how solar deals are put together when the roof is going on a building where the owner is not for profit and can't use the solar credit that you get federally for doing solar roofs. So I called the guy that I deal with, and just to make sure I understand where he stands today. And we talked about how the project would look. So long story short, they're not going to, this company they don't pay to replace a roof. You still put, solar panels on top of a roof. So the roof would still have to be replaced. But he said with the Massachusetts program that's in place, and he pointed out Massachusetts has a great program as far as credits, et cetera, that we still would save money by putting the solar panels on the roofs of one or more of these schools. In addition, you've got the ability to buy electricity back from the solar panels at a discount to what you normally would pay. So I just want to make sure that as we start talking about roofs, and we've got, a 50-year-old school and then two 20-something-year-old schools, 3 20-year-old schools, that we make sure that we do consider, for a variety of reasons, making these solar roofs on top.
Do you have any suggested next steps, or just for us to take it under advisement and keep it as an agenda item? You hear me?
You are frozen. No, you're not.
Did you?
I'm
Did you
sorry.
hear? I asked if you had any suggested next steps.
Oh, me? I thought you were talking to the group. So no, I just think that we need to make sure that as we get along further into deciding what to do with the schools, and he said, schools are the perfect place to put them. A lot of the roofs are fairly flat. John Parent confirmed that today when I talked to him, that Finn is, flat, Neary is flat, and Trotter has got a lot of flatness to it. So we just need to make sure that this is part of the process. So no, I don't think there's anything specific, Jason, just to keep in the back of our minds.
All right. Anything else on that? Item 7, standing committee language of town meeting warrant. I'm going to carry that to the next meeting. Any objections? Item 8, stabilization. I'm going to carry that to the next meeting. Item 9, capital project oversight. So at the last meeting, everyone had requested that Carla take the spreadsheet she had previously provided and show the original appropriation and the amount expended. I think what we need to discuss, and it doesn't have to be tonight, I can carry it, is whether there are any requests of any active capital projects to the Board of Selectmen that we want to test the oversight process on. But that request has to go through Mark and the Board of Selectmen based on our charge. So I guess what I'm looking for first and foremost, do you want to talk about that tonight or not? I'm going to take that as a no. The document is there for discussion at a future meeting. I assume it met what people were looking for at least, and you have the information to now make an informed decision. Before I go to public comment, we got to go back up and do our minutes. So item 3, approval of meeting minutes from January 11th, 2021. So were there any comments for Andrew on these?
Yeah, I think just Brian's last name was spelled wrong in a couple places.
Anyone else on those?
I've got a few. I'll do this real quick.
Okay.
And sorry, Andrew, a couple, these are just minor typo things. So first page, last paragraph, Ms. Braccio asked the chief to explain, just get rid of the word on to say how much. Next page, that starts out, it's the third full paragraph, starts off with Mr. Palmer. Second sentence that starts with the chief stated that he believes it is, let's see, it is, it does. Well, I'm not sure what I even mean there, so.
I think it makes sense, yeah.
You think it makes sense to say does? I think
Yeah, 'cause
is.
the previous question, he asked the chief whether that amount of water is enough.
Okay, it is, yeah, so I should say it is instead of does, so that's, so I meant it, okay.
Okay.
All right, then same page, go down to the 1, 2, 3, 4th full paragraph that starts out with Mr. Pfaff, and it's the next to last sentence. You need a said in there. The chief said, that is an option.
You said, okay.
Can I have one thing in that paragraph, Andrew? The third sentence, the chief responded that he's hesitant to purchase a used one, but possibly in demo tanker. Just possibly a demo tanker.
Possibly a demo taker, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, this is just clarification. Andrew, you probably meant exactly what you said. So if you go up to the middle of that paragraph where you're talking about, you say, Mr. Pfaff asked whether or not they could purchase a pumper trucker. You're talking to the chief now, excuse me, pumper tanker with a larger tank of water, as some have up to 3,000 gallon tank as a backup to the main pumper truck and sell the odor pumper. Okay, I get it now. See, my problem is I keep mixing up what a pumper and a tanker are. Okay, I'm okay with
These
that.
were a tough one. We had a lot of talking in this meeting.
Yeah, that was, so that's, I think it's fine after what Jason said. Right? Okay, now next page, very top, Miss Cook stated instead of state.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I know you guys are probably rolling your eyes. Okay, the last same page, the first, second, third paragraph in that section. Discuss whether the dollar amount and later time, the committee voted 6-0 by roll call to approve. Oh, I don't think we approved the meeting minutes.
Oh, yeah. The motion.
Yeah, the motion there.
I
Right.
copied from above. That's why.
All right, I think that's it. That's it.
All right.
Any other edits? All right, I'll move that we accept the minutes presented with the edits as discussed this evening. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Joe. Any further discussion? Roll call, Braccio,
aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Interneater. I think I saw abstain, but I didn't hear you. Still can't hear you. Anyone else hear him?
Mm-mm.
You're abstaining. Give me a thumbs up if you're abstaining. Okay. All right. Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. So 601. The January 25th, 2001 meeting minutes. Joe, I mean this with the utmost respect. This was more than a novel.
I'm on
And
page.
what'd you say?
I don't want anything missed.
So I guess I was of the view that it should be summarized a little bit more, but I would not go against a vote. But my concern was, Joe, like there was like just a bunch of words. Like I don't know if you were like getting like, did you literally watch the video and type it out like a stenographer or?
I go through the videos just to make sure that I'm not wrong.
Okay. So some of the word choices, like, you know, but I didn't go back and look. The words probably very well could have been used by me or any other member.
Some of them are a combination, yes.
Yeah. So that was my general comment was, one, we could probably save you some level of effort on future meeting minutes, just because I think it was 16 pages to go through. And that was actually not
no idea.
Not that long of a meeting. So that was my only comment that I'll throw out there on those. I could go through each of the items, but I honestly kept going, and so I don't know what others have to add on those.
Who do you want to go next?
If we want to go around the meeting laws, you can send me individual changes and I'll just resend them to everybody. But if we do it one-on-one, we can do that. So if everybody wants to send me their changes, that's fine. On the you mark it up and send it back to me, and I'll just make the changes that you want and resubmit them, if that's what people want to do.
I haven't, Jason, I haven't actually read through it in detail yet.
Okay.
But if you have edits, then maybe you send those to Joe and we can get a clean version and then do it for next meeting.
Well, hang on. So Andrew, you haven't read through them. Lisa, where are you at?
I haven't gone through all of them.
Kathy?
I've gone through it all. I've got some changes, and one is a fairly lengthy change. But can I just echo what Jason's saying? And I finally figured out what's going on here, because advisory's got really long minutes too. So because we can go back and look at the meeting and watch it, we're ending up with minutes that are just too long and too detailed. We don't have to put all this detailed he said, she said in here. We have to record decisions. We should record big things. But Joe, bless you for doing this. I mean, my gosh, this must take forever. But we just don't have the time to read these minutes this long and then still do the things that we've got to do. So we've got to find a way to cut these minutes down to something that is readable in a few minutes, so that we can go on and do the work of the committee. And again,
it'll be short with these minutes too, so I'll make this conversation seem shorter.
Yeah. So, I mean, for example, someone was trying to do minutes today to call me, and they were going to quote all the stuff that someone at a budget meeting said. And I said, you don't have to do that. Just say, we talked about boom, 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 see attached. They gave us a big presentation. So you don't have to quote everybody who said whatever. That's not what minutes should be about. And the reason, before, if someone was actively taking minutes at a meeting, they could never write all this stuff down. So it's because we've got the ability to go back and watch Zoom, is why we're ending up with these really detailed minutes. It's not just you, Joe. There's a lot of others that are doing really detailed minutes too, like this.
There's job opportunities for these sorts of minutes.
Well,
Okay.
I will add, Joe, I appreciate the detail of the minutes, because sometimes I go back and I have over time, and sometimes you try to figure out what was said at a meeting and what the intent of the meeting was, and it's not always easy. So I appreciate the work that you put into it. Not
I
that
don't-
everybody
I don't
else
mind-
doesn't, but
I don't mind summarizing all of you. I just want you to know you may be taken out of character. As long as we're good with that, I'm good with that. I have no
won't be
problem.
the first time, Joe. Won't be the
I just
first
want
time.
everybody to feel like they've been heard, like.
So Jeff, I didn't get to where
Yeah.
you at.
I've read through them. I have a couple of things, Joe, that I can send to you, but I did have one question, and again, not to continue the meeting, but
Yeah, go ahead.
there was something, Kathy, that you said that I'm not sure if it's captured correctly.
Okay.
It's on page 3. Let's see. The first full paragraph.
Yeah.
You said not coincidentally, the NASDAQ had predicted a kindergarten surge for the fall of 21 in their report the prior year, which did not materialize. Should that be 20? Because I thought above we said we didn't know what the 21 numbers were going to look like.
But they did project a surge. That's a fact.
For the fall of 21, but that hasn't happened yet.
It's a projection.
But they're projecting it. They had 168 in there for the fall.
Yeah, they had
It'll
the-
look a lot different when you see the next NASDAQ report, but it's still a projection.
yeah, they had that horrible surge predicted.
But how do we know that didn't materialize yet? If previously we say that we still don't know how the enrollment numbers for
Well, they
21,
predicted.
which will become.
Yeah, so NASDAQ used their formula to come up with a projection. And what the superintendent cautioned was they do their own projections internally, and it was gonna be different. Not to go back to the last agenda topic, you're gonna find in the new NASDAQ report, that's what drives this entire change, that kindergarten comment. So I actually think that's factually very accurate.
Okay.
So Jeff, they've reduced in the new one to 134 from 168.
Thank goodness.
Wow. Okay.
That's great.
Sure, I can send you the rest.
Okay, so what I would suggest is to follow the protocol that the town clerk outlined on these. If anyone has any suggestions, and Joe will summarize them at the next meeting and we will take a vote.
You want me to
That makes sense?
re-summarize these or just do these and summarize the next meeting?
I would take the feedback for future. I would never ask you to go back. As much
Thanks,
as,
I appreciate that.
yeah, that's not fair because it, most committees have their own paid minute taker, right? We are one of the few, especially with the length of this meeting in particular, right? So I think it's more to help you, save you time in the future.
Don't worry, I'll summarize this one.
Jason, is that something we want to put in the budget? I mean, we're not a standing committee, but if we become one, can we then have a budget for a minute taker? Brian, how does that work? Can you have an ad hoc committee have a budget? I guess you could, right?
I'm not sure. We've never done it, but
Andrew, who's going to present that to advisory?
yeah, try to
You.
get that through.
Not me.
Our minute taker is going to quit after the end of the year. She's already put her notice in because of all these minutes.
Fair question. I don't know that I want to discuss it at 10:37 in the evening. All right, so I'm gonna go to public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay. I'm seeing none. Any other business that may properly come before the committee? Seeing none, I will move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Steve is
further
now our
discussion?
Judy. Steve is now our Judy.
All right, I told Steve our meetings are approximately 2 hours, so I've already failed. Roll call vote. Braccio,
Aye.
Cook,
Aye.
Hark,
Aye.
Hinton Eater,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
and Malinowski's aye. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.